Live from the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, that's actually
that's
true now.
That's accurate.
Accurate.
This is On the Stick. Not even after dark. I mean, it's kind of after dark.
It's after dark. It's been dark for like 3 hours.
It's actually a regular On the Stick episode, for the first one in about a year. Woohoo. Because we're here to talk about the best video games of 2017.
Yes, specifically 2017.
Our favorite from that year of the things and stuff.
No, this is a definitive list. These are the only video games that were any good.
That's
that
right.
Came out in
Everything all qualitative things are objective, and there's no subjectivity here at all.
Right.
Correct.
You can qualitative and quantitative are synonyms. So
you can take this to the bank because math.
That's right.
We do use math. Let me tell you, I know a thing or two about math, and we use the most math of any podcast type group to determine what the best games of the year are. There's no room for discussion or agreement.
All right. Well, since we're not going to discuss, I'll just introduce ours to Ellis, and then we'll end the show. I'm Eric Allen.
It'll just be a static screen of the list, and that's it.
And with me tonight is Kurt Adam.
That's me with the static list.
Mike Hales.
How do you do?
The master mathematician, and Joe Drilling.
Right.
I'm 74% loaded.
Okay, that's good. If you can get to 100% before we really get deep into this, that would be good.
I'm hoping.
But last night, did you get loaded?
No, I'm straight edge. I never
on a
get
bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
our good friend Morbid Coffee is also like hanging out in Discord. So if he chimes in at some point, we'll
just
we'll
fair warning.
Then. Yeah, but so yeah, we're gonna, as we always do or have done since 2010. Or 2011?
2009 or 10, I think.
Yeah.
Good grief.
So we've been doing this for a long time now. We compiled a list of our favorite games from 2017, and we're going to use this just as an excuse to talk about them for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I have
even more so than other times, because we don't do this every week like we used to. So. Yeah.
I have some video footage that I've compiled from our top 10 in quotation marks, games that we'll check out a little bit of as we go through
our top 10, 14 games.
Yeah, but I think first maybe we should go through our runners up.
Yes,
we should.
I think
other games receiving votes.
Yeah, there were some other games that received votes, like Friday the 13th, the video game, which Joe voted for.
That was a pretty fun video game if you're into asymmetrical multiplayer games.
I concur on that.
Things being kind of glitchy.
Yeah, it was a fun video game.
It looked like fun. I definitely the launch and like the follow up to that was marred by just a myriad of technical problems that I think turned a lot of people off. But it is like it's an interesting concept for asymmetrical multiplayer.
And it seemed to have a lot of heart.
It's still getting support. Like they just added a couple new maps, and they've added multiple new Jasons with new weapons, and they finally added Uber Jason from Friday the 13th
universe has so many Jasons that a game that launched with like 10 Jasons gets multiple Jasons added to it.
Not all the Jasons.
Yeah,
that's right.
And all the DLC has been free. They have not charged for any. Or sorry, there's cosmetic stuff that you can pay like $1 or $2 for outfits, but all the Jasons and all the maps and all that stuff has been, and all the additional counselors have all been free.
So. That's good.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just one person plays as Jason, and then a group of like 8 people play as counselors.
I think 7 if I remember correctly. 7 play as counselors.
I think it's 8 altogether, right? One
as
counselors.
You have to do a subset of arcane quests, sort of, to get yourself free from being killed by Jason. So
you're running around in the woods or whatever, and trying to avoid getting killed while finding gas for a car or whatever.
The best video game interpretation of a classic horror franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the other Friday the 13th games are kind of trash.
Yeah, actually, I talked about this game at length. Kurt and I streamed it in October, and I did a video about it in October as well. So you can go back and look at those things if you're curious.
This was like a very popular streaming game as well, I think, when it came out. So also
just in general, a lot of people streamed it.
Also receiving votes is Doki Doki Literature Club, which I believe Joe had at number 1.
It was 10,000
people are monsters.
No, this was me.
For,
As I was putting my list
Mike
together.
doesn't know what good video games are. Apparently, either he only played 9 other video games this year.
So
he rated it in that way for the amount of torture he put the rest of us through.
So as I was putting my list together, I had one spot at the bottom I wasn't sure what to do with, and I'm not going to say this was the best game that I could have put in that spot that I played this year, but it probably is the one that I had the most fun with. I don't think that Doki Doki Literature Club is an amazing visual novel, and in a world that's already got like the 999 series and the Danganronpa series, it's kind of hard to argue that it's like subversive enough to really, carry that weight. But I had so much fun playing that game on the stream and torturing Joe with it. That it's one of my best game experiences of the year, whether or not the game itself was super great. And
you can also watch that. That is archived.
Yeah, that's from our Extra Life stream.
The whole dang thing. Start the video at about 11:30 p.m. and watch till the end if you want the.
You can
proper
see.
If you want the real.
You can see about like 105 minutes in where Joe's soul dies.
Don't you think that's worth a spot on the list?
Was.
That is worth a spot on the list.
This was actually a really good year for visual novels. I'll just mention this year where I haven't played Dream Daddy yet, but that seems like a really good one. Or for like visual novels that don't suffer from weird translations,
right?
From Japanese, which is
or super skeevy or whatever.
Yeah, that actually have interesting themes beyond get as many girlfriends.
Right.
As you
Doki
can.
Doki Literature Club was only kind of skeevy.
But there's also one called Butterfly Soup, which I did play through, and that was also really cute. Didn't quite make my list, but was definitely in the upper echelons of games that I played this year. Was really
Mike
good.
Bithell of
Gunpoint?
Thomas Was Alone and Volume actually put one out this year that they're in 2017 as well that I played through shortly before we wrapped this up, called Subsurface Circular.
I want to play that. That's not a visual novel, though. That's an adventure game, isn't it?
Half of one, 6 of one.
You don't do anything but talk to people.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna play that on the stream at some point.
There's something called. Yeah. There was another one I played called Local Host, which is like a $5 indie game that's like maybe an hour long. That is also pretty good. That's about.
The Subsurface Circular is like 2 hours.
Yeah, Local Host is about like these AI programs that are on hard drives that you're supposed to wipe, but you have to like get permission from them to wipe them or trick them into allowing you that sort of deep access. And that's pretty interesting. And there was one other one that I played.
Stories Untold was kind of
the first chapter of Stories Untold is a fascinating like 35-minute.
Yeah, I played through that as well.
I mean,
last week or week before.
I kind of hesitate to use visual novel for some of those because like for people that have been playing visual novels for a really long time, like they have a very defined
idea of what
genre
that is.
Identification for that, and so I kind of hate to throw it around a little too loosely, but some of those games don't really fit neatly into like adventure game territory or whatever, and they're not like text adventures or twine games or whatever. There's like a weird space where all of those things are kind of bleeding together, and it's been pretty good. So also receiving votes is an actual adventure game called Thimbleweed Park, which is an adventure game.
It is an adventure game. I wrote
X-Files, the satire, the video game, the Maniac Mansion follow-up.
Exactly. Ron Gilbert's kickstarted adventure game, which is old school adventure game as fuck. And it extrapolates to, I guess Maniac Mansion had how many characters?
You controlled 3. You picked 3 from a cast.
Say it was 3. Yeah.
From a cast of like
there were 5,
8 or 9. Yeah.
There were 5 playables in Thimbleweed Park. 2 were X-Files-esque agents. 1 was a ghost. 1 was a dirty-mouthed clown who, most of whom's dialogue was beeps as he was being bleeped out, which is pretty funny.
That is a very Ron Gilbert joke. Very like 1991 Monkey Island style.
It totally is. And I had a lot of fun playing that game. There were maybe 1 or 2 puzzles that I was like, I couldn't quite follow how to make that happen, but the sort of the quality of writing, the quality of humor, and all that stuff was definitely there for me. So Yeah, had a lot of fun playing it.
I want to play. I want to play that. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yep.
Let's see. Also receiving votes is What Remains of Edith Finch, which I played, and I think Joe is the one that voted for it. So
Joe is the one that voted for it. I played it also.
I did vote for it. This is one of those. I feel like almost every year, or close to close to every year that we've done this, there's some sort of quirky, short-ish indie game that I play through in one sitting, and then inevitably finds its way onto my list somewhere. One year it was Gunpoint. One year it was Last year I think it was Firewatch, and this year it was What Remains of Edith Finch, which is actually very similar to Firewatch, but I actually liked, I think, more than Firewatch.
Yeah, I
feel like there's more to it.
Yeah,
because there's so many disparate stories that you go through, and each one of those is unique.
Right. It doesn't have the the emotional core of Firewatch, I don't think, of like the sort of weird romance between your character and the woman who's at the other tower that you never see. But it's about this family that may or may not be cursed. Basically, everybody in the family dies young. Everybody dies young. Some of them die
and in weird ways.
And in weird ways. Yeah. But the highlights for me where there's a section that's like an EC comic book, like an issue of Tales from the Crypt, that the visual style changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a section towards the end where it's like sort of like a fantasy.
Yeah, where a blue-collar worker, a guy that works in a fish factory, is cutting heads off of fishes. And you have to, you're like with one hand, you're controlling the action of sliding the fish into slot and then cutting its head off and then pushing it, farther down the factory line. And then with the other hand, you're playing this like 3D, like adventure game kind of thing where you're wandering around through a kingdom and talking to people, and that's like
right as he's essentially slowly losing touch with their daydreaming.
And the dream more and more really encroaches on the fish head cutting part, and it's really it feels very profound actually when
it
was a pretty touching thing. But
some of it's also really sort of abstracted, like all these people died, but like there's one where you are on a swing, you're a kid on a swing and you swing over the bar, and it's like he probably didn't actually die from swinging over the bar, but that's like the mythos of the family is like that, you know what I mean? Right. So it's like
you can't swing over the bar unless your swing is not made of chains or rope but pipe.
Right.
They did a Mythbusters on that at one point, but it's like a short story collection where you see all the, like in a lot of cases, the deaths in the families, like they are tragic, but they're also funny. Like it's Edith Finch, it gets this reputation as a very serious game, but it's really, really funny in some places.
I think that's true. It has sort of a dark humor to it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the characters is like, hiding out in the basement for years and years and years. Finally decides to get out and gets hit by a train immediately.
Gets hit by a train as soon as he...
I literally started laughing out loud as soon as that happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I probably should have mentioned up front, but we're not going to.
Hey, spoilers!
Spoilers in this. I'll throw that in. Maybe.
Sorry.
Edith Finch. I mean, for me though, Edith Finch is sort of the journey is the thing, right? Which is any good
piece
game,
of fiction.
Any good piece of storytelling period is like the journey is the thing, and that's the way it is with Edith Finch. And also the art. Just the last thing I want to say before we move on, since these are still like also receiving votes, right? We don't want to dwell on this, but the architecture of the house is really cool.
Yeah,
and that's very fun just to explore the house.
Right, that kind of has like a Gone Home sort of element to it, where you're exploring the house, but it's
the matriarch decides to lock up each of the bedrooms as
she feels
as people die or whatever, and so part of the thing is that you have to sort of figure out how to get into the various rooms and then play through the story or whatever, and then move on to the next one, and that journey is also interesting.
All right, so also receiving votes was
Etrian Odyssey 5. Unless you're
Don't steal Eric's thunder. Right. He's the one who's got the pictures.
I switched pictures.
It seemed like he was going to jump past it, so I wanted to make sure we didn't miss it.
I've been a lifelong Etrian Odyssey fan in the sense that I've enjoyed the series for as long as it has been alive. And I think the new one is pretty good. It's not the best of the series, but it's kind of squarely around the middle. It's just a quality dungeon crawler. They walked back a little bit of the stuff that they've been doing in the last couple of games with all the subclassing, which started to make things a little unwieldy, and they just give you a whole new raft of characters that you can choose to specialize in one of a couple ways.
Yeah, it doesn't have the weird vehicle stuff from 4 either.
Yeah, they've kind of stripped it down. Your character is just one character now, as opposed to having subclasses. You don't have the whole weird overworld in addition to the labyrinth, and they just concentrated on making some new, interesting character classes and making the labyrinth be full of different, like, interesting encounters and lots of FOEs that behave in, unique ways that you really have to think about. So it's just kind of it's a quality game.
Yeah, I picked it up, but I've only done a couple of floors.
Yeah, I haven't finished it myself either because these games are incredibly long. I think this is the first one that actually has a counter when you save the game, and it's almost discouraging to see how long it takes to finish one floor in the game.
There's something very relaxing about drawing those maps, though.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a really good feeling.
And it's also...
So what are they going to do now? What are they going to do after this? Because with the 3DS being replaced by the Switch...
It seems like they're planning one more Etrian Odyssey game on the 3DS before they put that part of the series to bed, which is going to be... I'm not sure if it's going to be kind of like a weird retrospective or something. After that, who knows? I would have to... I would have to assume the next stop for this series will be the Switch, but who knows? I'm not in any rush. I mean, they put these games out about every 4 years, and that's about as often as I want to play one, but I tend to really like them. And this one has some cool stuff where you can now have like a line of summoned characters, and so there are fun classes that are all about kind of like filling up your front line with summoned characters, like my Necromancer who summons wraiths, and I don't know. It's different from the previous ones without being too different, and it's just well made and not gimmicky. And yeah, it's good. I've enjoyed it.
The answer is that you'll have to have 2 Switches.
No, there you go. Okay. You'll network 2 Switches together, one to run the map on and one to play.
Yeah, because it just having to switch from the main screen to the map screen without just moving your stylus onto the touch screen is going to be weird. But anyway, let's see. Also receiving votes is Sonic Mania.
Oh, that's me again, huh?
That's you again.
Boo!
Oh, hey,
hi, Alex.
Alex Rio.
Hey, guys.
Sonic Mania.
This is a positive place, Alex.
I streamed a little bit of this game, and I talked about it then. The criticisms that I heard of it were primarily like, oh, all they did was take like old Sonic levels and like sort of repurpose them and then make new Sonic levels that are in the theme of the old Sonic levels. And I was like, yeah, that's fine.
Isn't that what people have been asking for like 25 years?
I don't think people have been specifically asking for that because like Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles like still exist. So if I wanted to play those and like they're readily available anywhere you want to get them. Like I think you can get Sonic 1 for free on Android at this point. Like if you want to play Sonic, you can play Sonic. It's not hard, but people wanted a game in the old style. And that's what we got. It's basically a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's like a Genesis Sonic game, but I really feel like somebody else said this. I don't want to take credit for this, but somebody said it, and after playing it, I agree. And it feels more like if they decided to do a 2D Sonic on the Saturn, that's really what I feel like. It like the animation of the sprites and everything is too smooth for the Genesis. And like some of the bonus stages are sort of like blocky polygons, like in a very Saturn style. Like it feels like this is the Saturn Sonic game that everybody wanted and we never got on the Saturn. And that's totally fine for me. And you can play through it in like 3 hours, if that. So
that's cool. I don't like Sonic that much, but I'm glad that people that like Sonic finally got the Sonic game that they've been asking for decades basically at this point, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Long-suffering fans.
Yeah, it's really good. Let's see. Also receiving votes is Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
Yeah, I voted for that.
I believe, yeah, Kirk put that on his list.
Yeah, Eric and I talked about this a number of months ago, but for those that don't know, or just shoot it because Rabbids, it's basically an XCOM type tactical game, but with Mario on one side and Rabbids on the other side, or
teaming.
They're on the
together.
same team,
right?
Evil Rabbids and also teamings. Yeah.
At last, the team up that we've all been clamoring for.
Yeah, that none of us have been clamoring for.
It's a fucking good team up because Rabbid Peach is maybe one of the best characters I've ever encountered in one of these types of games.
Rabbid Peach is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, Rabbid Peach is great. Actually, regular Peach is also great when she flies down and starts blasting dudes with a huge shotgun.
Yeah.
She's like... she is considerably more effective in this type of game than Mario is. Mario actually kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a really fun game. The reason I left it off my list was just that there's not enough enemy types. There's not enough variation.
It's totally true.
The strategy, but I'll be way into a sequel at some point.
The thing that they added that is at least not in XCOM things, is that there are more options on movement.
Yeah.
And so you can do, you can slide into enemies, you can bounce off of enemies, you can
bounce off your teammates.
You can go through pipes, and now all of those additional movement options gives you a lot of tactical choices and things that you can do within a battle to try and get the advantage against enemies and stuff.
Yeah, it really pays to be super aggressive.
It does, yeah. You're pretty much forced to kind of do that, or you'll end up in trouble. But I agree with Eric. That's part of the reason it was so low on my list. I thought about leaving it off, but I was like, what else would I put in? I had a ton of fun playing it from start to finish. But by the end, I was kind of like, yeah, it would be nice if there was a little more. Like, oh, now there's just 5 of these really irritating dudes, instead of like some new version of a thing.
Sounds super fun.
Yeah. But I sort of felt, and we'll cover this when we get to XCOM 2, but I kind of felt that a little bit that way at the end of that game too. So it's like, yeah, I've had about enough of this. I guess I'll power through to finish it. But okay. There's a
couple of high points in Mario and Rabbids, like the bosses, specifically the Donkey Kong fight. There's a Rabbid Donkey Kong that you fight that is really amazing and has a great intro, and then there's also a giant ghost that you fight that sings a song where he just dunks on Mario over and over again.
It's true.
It's really
It's
hilarious.
so funny.
So
while you're running around trying to kick the shit out of him.
Yeah, it's really out of character for something in a Mario game, and it really like Ubisoft was given enough of.
They were given an amazing amount of license to do shit. I mean, there's just really crass like poop jokes and jokes at Mario's expense and all that stuff, and. Like, I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying I'm amazed that they were allowed to do any of it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a Rabbids game, it has to have there's a certain quota of toilet jokes that you have to.
There's a certain bar that they have to go underneath.
The bar can only go so high.
Yeah. But I'd be like I said, if there was a sequel to this that had more enemy variety and forced you to be a little bit more diverse in your tactics, I'd be way into it.
Well, it was like kind of a breakout hit, right? It was one of the best-selling games on the platform. This past year.
I think a lot of people were surprised when it came out, saying, "Oh, this isn't just some weird, like garbage cash-in thing."
Also,
for cashing in for what I don't know, but
well, it could have been like.
Could have been just the most rote bullshit.
Hotel Mario, or even like Mario is missing or something, like kind of a low quality. License
edutainment game.
Yeah.
This is not that. So that was nice.
It's pretty good. They also need to rework the way the overworld works, because like the overworld is this map where you have to solve these really brain dead, boring puzzles, and that is also something that I never finished it because of how boring the combat got at a certain point and how tedious solving the overworld puzzles was. But
the secondary problem with that too is that once you clear out one of the overworlds,
there's no quick travel or anything.
There's no quick travel, and if there's stuff like if you want to like. There's stuff that you can find in levels, or there's additional challenges or whatever. You gotta
there's
like
run all the way through it again. Style power-ups that let you explore other sections of the map, and so to get back to those areas, you have to traverse the same area that you've been through already,
which are now completely empty because you've beat the various things. So you're just spending all 3 minutes running through nothing.
Yep.
Just to get to a ping and go, okay, now I can open this thing and go through.
It's a very flawed game, but the base is something that I like I said, I'd be all about a sequel that's better in all the different ways it needs improvement.
That's actually my kind of my theme for this list for this year. So,
it's fair.
Man, this is really good. Caveat, caveat, caveat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we? I'm sorry. Can we back up for just a minute? You said that a boss was a rabid Donkey Kong.
Yep.
And so, out of context,
we had to put him down, Alex.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. It's like this is a game where Mario got a gun,
and Mario took like 9 shots to the belly.
Yep. Take Donkey Kong out behind the old shack.
Alex, is that true? Do you still have to get 9 shots in your stomach if you get rabies? You're a medical professional, right?
Yeah, but I don't know.
I believe you don't.
I don't know. Usually you just get...
I think it's just pills now. I don't think you have to do the shots thing.
I don't know.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
That would not be dealt with in the part of the hospital I work in. So that would be... I don't know.
Because Nurse Alex would be standing there going, nope.
Yeah, I'd be like,
that's only for...
Alex just files paperwork.
That's only for people who work in the old yellow ward. Anyway,
nice. It's the one behind the one behind the barn.
Yeah. Well, Alex, do you work in the psychiatry ward? Because maybe you could tell us about our next game.
Also receiving votes, Hellblade Senua. Is that how you say it, Joe?
Senua.
Sacrifice.
Yep.
Yeah. Am I the only one who died? This is just me.
You voted for it, but I played it.
That only came out on PlayStation, correct, or is it on PC?
I think it's on PC.
I believe it's on PC. Okay. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think it came out on PS4 first.
Yeah, it did.
I thought that.
So this was a self-funded effort by Ninja Theory, who is responsible for Enslaved Journey to the West and the Devil May Cry remake and Heavenly Sword.
Which was fantastic. Not Heavenly Sword, but DMC. And Enslaved.
DMC was really good.
Enslaved has great characters.
Yeah.
And Hellblade has... So Hellblade is... You play... Okay. It is
you play as Senua or the Sacrifice?
You play as Senua.
You play as the Hellblade.
It's a spin on...
the talking sword.
So it's a spin on the Orpheus myth, except you play as a Celtic warrior who is descending into the Norse mythology version of hell to save her lover's soul.
Because he's been taken by them.
Because he was right. But she is also dealing with issues. She suffers from psychosis. She has hallucinations. She hears voices, which sort of guide you, and sometimes, yes, just like Randy Orton. Except they told her that to get some better music. So sometimes the voices help you, sometimes they lie to you.
Listen to our other podcast.
Yeah, there are multiple voices that are talking to you like fairly constantly throughout the game, and some are giving you hints or telling you things that you need to do or whatever, and some are just like simultaneously. One can be going, "It's all fine. You're doing the right thing," and another one can be like, "You're just a useless piece of shit. And you should turn back. You're just gonna die."
Right. And I remember the first time I saw the trailer at I think it was PlayStation Experience in December 2016 is when they unveiled it. And I think my reaction and a lot of people's reaction was like, it would be really easy to fumble that.
Yeah.
But they worked closely with people who are psychiatrists and with people who have suffered from these kinds of issues. And I have not had any of those struggles with that kind of mental illness, but from what I understand, it was a pretty admirable effort, even if it didn't get everything perfectly right. But sort of the theme of it is overcoming those sort of things, and you never really know what's real and what isn't, which I think is kind of a cool thing. And it nicely balances sort of some slight puzzle solving and sort of hunting for ruins to open doors and combat, which Kurt told me when I was about halfway through it, or about a third of the way through it, that he didn't like the combat, but I've played through the whole thing. And even up till the end, I liked the combat. I thought it was just complex enough.
So what I had said was that I was annoyed because there were times when the camera was placed in such a way that guys would get behind you, and you could be pinned down in troublesome ways because you didn't necessarily move very quickly. So when you try to like dodge or whatever out of the way, you know, depending on, because sometimes you'll end up fighting like 6 or 8 dudes, and they'll all be sort of looming around and taking shots at you, especially when you get near the end where there's some of the really big dudes who it can be really tricky to deal with them while you've got these little guys that are jumping, you know, because like one will have a sword, one will have like 2 giant, you know,
swords.
Some of them have a hammer. Some of them carry hammers.
And one will have a shield, and they're sort of looping around, and you kind of got to deal with them differently. And you know, as you're trying to do
shield
that, you
guys
can end up being pinned into you know part of the geometry, and trying to work your way out of it can be troublesome. So I would say that was irritating to me, but not so much that I was like, oh, the combat in this is not good. Because I think that's actually something that Ninja Theory generally does really well. So you know, here I think it was that there was just times when I got into that problem, especially like there's a section near the end where you go across this big wooden bridge, and you have to run a gauntlet. It's
that's at the very end.
Yeah, it's really close to the end, and it just keeps warping in dudes, and you can't and just sort of trying to work my way to where I wasn't getting surrounded by like 4 or 5 of them, but you know there were like invisible walls pinning you into the arena, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work my way where, oh shit, I can't go any further, and now like 2 of them are right on top of me, and I gotta move. Yeah, so
I think you have to be very diligent about your use of the time slowing thing, and that helps you out of some, especially once you have that titular Hellblade. Because the time slowing not only slows time, but then it boosts your sword attack, and you have a charge attack you can use by then, and sort of using those things to your advantage helped in those. I only failed that section 1 time on the bridge, and the second time I was like,
I only failed it once as well.
Cool.
It just took me way longer than I felt like it should have to sort of make my way through it.
It's cool that game came out at like was it like $30 or $40 or whatever, and it's a little shorter.
It was $30. Yeah, it was $30.
It definitely has,
it was like
production
7 or 8 hours
values of a bigger like budget game, which is pretty interesting.
And all the performances are good. The woman who plays Senua did the motion capture and the voice work, and she did a fantastic job.
She did a bang up job, yeah.
And the guy who you have a sort of a guy, your brother, the spirit of your brother is sort of this guide who explains kind of everything. And
not a spirit guide, but a spirit guy.
Yeah,
that's right.
Why not both?
You know, he did a fantastic job, and I mean, I really, especially if it goes on sale, which I think it might actually, as we're recording this thing, it might be on sale on PSN because they're having a big sale right now, but I don't remember. It might have been last week, but if you can get it on sale, especially, I would highly recommend checking it out.
Well worth your time.
Cool. And it gives me, as you were saying, it gives me a lot of hope that a studio like this was able to self-fund a game like this, and I would like to see more studios sort of aspire to a quote-unquote AAA kind of experience on their own without it being
Ninja Theory has done some really big budget stuff in the past, and their face tech has always been like leaps and bounds better than pretty much everybody else's. So like they have some of the expensive stuff done, maybe, and I don't know if they own any of that stuff or not.
Yeah, I don't think they could have done this without having done those things first.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's still
but
really
even
nice
so, I mean, doing that, that should cost a ton of money to make.
Yeah.
And
it's good.
They did it.
Let's see. Also receiving votes is Prey. I believe Kurt is the only one that, or Joe played that a little bit, and Kurt, you finished
I played it, and I did not like it.
I want to play it, but I have not had a chance to yet.
So that's interesting. Why didn't you like it?
I got to a point where...
how long did you play?
How long did you pray?
2 to 3 hours, I guess I would say. I got to about the point where the space station sort of opens up. You know what's going on. You know what your goal is.
Right.
And the space station sort of opens up, and it's sort of like now you can kind of go and sort of do side quests or do other stuff or do whatever.
Right.
And I felt like at that point I just felt kind of lost. Like I wasn't really sure what was the most important thing to do next or where exactly to go. And there are monsters that will like straight fuck you up.
I totally.
Like
there's instantly. At least one monster that the first time you meet it, like it's, you know, orders of magnitude worse than anything else you can do. And that's actually one that they're like, well, you could hide for 2 minutes and then you'll be fine because they'll leave.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm going to do that because like as soon as he saw me, he took like one swipe at me and I was dead. I'm like, oh, that's a problem.
I just can't deal with these right now. So this is kind of like a System Shock in that
it's made by
game, right? Like
it's made by Arcane.
And they made Dishonored 2, which was another in that style with a different setting, obviously, from last year.
Yeah, I think it's more it plays to their strengths in that the station that you are on, you know, has a ton of atmosphere. You know, it's for the most part a coherent, you know, space that you can navigate. Albeit because it's a space station.
What's the phrase that I heard come up this year a lot for this type of game?
Immersive sims.
Immersive sims, yeah.
Which
that's a terrible fucking name.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's
there's a lot of push for that, and then also Pathfinder games for games that are like Super Metroid and Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, which is probably a better term than Metroidvania, but I still don't like it very much.
I always wanted to call those exploration platformers.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most literal, easiest to understand definition.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Anyway, sorry, Kurt.
So I enjoyed sort of sorting out what was going on in the story and navigating around in the station and, you know, sort of wandering about and dealing with all the traps and stuff. One of the hooks was that the aliens, there are these things called mimics, which can turn into any sort of random object.
Coffee pots and chairs. So you can
walk into a room and be like, okay, I got to do this. And all of a sudden the coffee pot turns into a dude and just starts charging at you.
It's so brilliant to turn the props that you just ignore in every other video game into an enemy. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's like prop hunt mode in some old shooters and stuff, but I don't. This is the first time I'm aware of that somebody really leveraged that.
Yeah, it really puts you on your toes and makes it sort of heightens the tension in just wandering around in this empty space station, quote empty because it's not actually empty. There are people around and stuff, but there's lots of areas that have just been abandoned or whatever. I
was gonna say it's a Shock style game, so there are people, but you never interact with them.
Yeah, actually, you do interact with them.
You do.
There are a couple of spots where there are people that you do actually interact with, but it's like, okay, we need to do X, Y, and Z. You do that stuff, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go do more, and I'll be back. See ya.
Yeah. I really.
The monsters don't kill you.
Right. The thing that I think didn't click with me was that it felt similar to like Deus Ex, like Human Revolution, and it was like, but I felt like in Deus Ex, I felt like there wasn't really a wrong. Like if I would see a thing like an ability and be like, oh, I'll like spec for that because I think it would be fun to play that way.
Yeah.
But I felt like in Prey, when I didn't spec the quote right way, like I just got killed, and I was like, I'm not able to use the skills that I decided to take to actually deal with this thing that I'm supposed to deal with, and so like that to me just sort of sapped the fun out of it.
I can see that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I still want to check it out. I still haven't played Dishonored 2, which I also really want to check out, but at some point I will get to these games.
I enjoyed Dishonored 2 far more, I will say that.
Okay.
Like I enjoyed this, but a lot of people were praising this one way more than I did, or than I would have. But it was sort of, you know, my problem in doing any of this is always sort of, here's a giant pile of games that I played. Okay, now I'm going to winnow out these ones. Okay, now I have maybe 15 or whatever that I liked, but differentiating between sort of this group of 5 and this group of 5 is easy, but within that, that's where it's tricky. So for me, this is sort of, I think I voted for it as maybe like 6th or 7th or something like that.
Yeah.
And I would no, it's right in the middle. I would definitely, like, for anybody that was into that kind of thing, I'm like, well, I would play Dishonored 2 first, but that's me.
Dishonored 2 is also cheaper right now, so
yeah,
I'll go that direction first for sure. And the final runner-up, the final also receiving votes, is Persona 5, which I think I'm the only one of us that really spent a significant amount of time with this game.
Still waiting for that Switch port.
I played about 50 hours.
You've been waiting a while.
Yeah, I played about 50 hours of it, which is about half, probably.
I was going to say, so you finished like 1/3. Yeah.
If this game had a better translation, it may have been number 1 on my list. I probably will say that more than once about some of these other games that also made my list.
It would have been number 1.
Yeah, there's definitely a world where Persona 5 is my favorite game that came out this year. And there's also a world where this is the best Japanese RPG that I've ever played. I think that the dungeon design is really brilliant. It's not procedurally generated like some of the previous Persona games, and it really, like, the dungeon design is just fantastic. They do a great job of, like, doing the Psychonauts thing where the dungeons are based on the psychology of the character that so like the main theme of the game is that it's mostly about abuses. Well, it's kind of adult suck, but it's more about abuses of power, and like about how people basically need a superpower in order to overcome, like, if there's a discrepancy in a relationship and the amount of power one person has over another, you kind of need a superpower in order to overcome that. And this game kind of gives you that superpower, and that it turns you into a thief that can go into someone's head and steal their heart and sort of make them, you basically give them empathy. Like, you make them feel bad for what they did by, like, showing them the position of the people that they hurt. And that was a really great theme for a game that came out in 2017. And unfortunately, the translation is just not up to snuff in a lot of ways. It's just like it falls back on a lot of the problems that Japanese RPGs that came out in the late 90s and the early 2000s, like the PlayStation era stuff, where, like, they'll repeat phrases over and over and again, and there's, like, a lot of awkward sentences, and the sentence structure is fucked up, and the, like, syntax is messed up, and there's just, like, it happens. It's like this constant deluge of, like, annoying translation errors. And then at a certain point, it also sort of, it's not just annoying to, like, read like text that's not smooth, but it's also annoying because it's hard to, like, pick apart what the game is actually trying to tell you in some cases.
I'm surprised that it's that bad. Like, the Persona series has been pretty big for Atlas
compared to 3 and 4. This is it's really horrible.
It's shoddy.
Yeah, it's really bad.
I mean, I'm 100% serious when I say I'm waiting for them to make a Switch port, which I hope will happen someday.
I'd pay $60 right now for a port that just had a better translation. So
that's what I'm saying. Is hopefully, if they do that in a year or two, they'll take the time to go back and improve some of the incidental text and things.
To circle back to the point I was making, is that the dungeon design is based on the psyche of the person that you're entering. So it kind of, like, you get to know the characters via the level design in a way that I haven't really seen in a game since Psychonauts. There's just a lot of really clever thing, and it also, like, look at this fucking art, right? Like, the whole game looks like this. The artwork is amazing. The character designs are great. The gameplay loop is basically the same as the previous Persona games, where you're fusing demons, and this also brings in some of the older SMT stuff where you actually, like, talk to demons and try and recruit them instead of just giving them to you randomly. And it's just, it does so many things so fucking good. And then it's a huge RPG with a ton of story, and the translation is bad. So it's just like rain on my parade harder, right? Like, it's just like the main thrust of this game, where you're interacting with people and leveling up your S ranks. And one of the major themes of all the Persona games is that you become stronger as a person the more you connect with the people around you. And so you're constantly talking to people, and the things that they're saying to you just don't make sense, or they're inconsistent, or like I said, just the grammar and the syntax is awkward. And it just, it's a fatal flaw of the game, in my opinion, which is unfortunate because, like I said, most of everything else about it is just fucking fantastic. And even compared to like Persona 4, which had Yosuke and a lot of like really awful, like homophobic and transphobic themes that didn't get, that sort of were kept in even in the translation. This game, as far as I can tell, sort of misses some of that. There's still some like a lot of sexist stuff, but it is a much more, I found the cast in general to be much more like broadly likable than the cast of Persona 4, even though there's nobody in this game that is as good as Chie or Naoto or some of the characters from Persona 3. It's still it like I said, with a better translation, I think this could probably have been my favorite game that came out this year, but it wore me down to the point where I never ever even bothered to finish it.
Well, they retranslated the latest Ys game, so maybe they'll do that to Persona.
That's what I was about to say. Damn it. I was going to say there's precedent because that game, you were describing the translation of this game. I've not played Persona 5, but you describing that was like me playing that game, and then they just made a new translation for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I saw I saw screen caps of the Persona or the Ys. Is it 7 or 8?
8.
I saw screen caps, and it's pretty much the exact same sort of fuck up, like the same sort of weird syntax errors and them saying a thing and then saying the exact same thing slightly different way.
I think a very
a
very easy way to explain it is they translated it, but they didn't localize it.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it is like a very literal, like, this is the words that I am saying that are coming out of my mouth.
It's only like, slightly better than if they just put it through Babelfish or something.
But it's weird.
Does Babelfish still exist?
I don't think so. I think it would be Google Translate now.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are also receiving votes. What's up, Alex?
Yeah.
I was gonna say that as far as like things that are gross happening in a Persona game, look up the Temperance social link. Yeah.
I think
not too good.
It ain't great, but it is somewhat justified by the text.
Is that the fucking the teacher one?
That's the fucking the teacher one.
Yeah.
Kind of. You kind of fuck the teacher.
I mean, she's like a maid too,
it's one of those
so
things
it's a little weirder too.
That plays
it's not just fucking the teacher.
It's one of those things.
She's also your slave.
Yeah, it's one of those things that plays much more poorly when you pull it out of the context of the game, but it still is a huge misstep. But it's still not nearly as bad as listening to Yosuke be a homophobic piece of shit for 70 hours and having nobody in the game ever say, "Hey, Yosuke, shut the fuck up. We don't want to listen to your garbage anymore."
That game, let's not go there. Anyway,
that's a whole different discussion.
The
problem with the Persona games that there's so much that it's hard to talk about them without going
concisely
on for a long time. Anyway, so now let's get into the meat. We'll get into our top quote unquote 10 games. Listeners from you,
5-way tie for 10.
We tend to have a lot of ties because we just make an ordered list and they get points based on where they are. And for the last couple of years, we've been doing 10 games instead of 5 each because the gaming has just gotten really broad and kind of awesome for the last couple of years.
I've been saying, the last 5 or 10 years have been the kind of the best time to be playing video games, and I'm still mad. I said this last year, but Vinny Caravella is sort of biting my style in a much more popular podcast. But
go back and listen to the Stickie Awards.
I swear I said it
first.
Years. Yeah, I swear I said it first.
You can't because they're not archived anywhere right now, but that's fine. If you downloaded them back then and still have them on your iTunes.
Yeah, I think I've got them somewhere. Somehow we managed to avoid ties anywhere in our top 10 except at number 10, where there is a staggering 5-way tie for games number 10 through 14, starting with
10 through 14. Boy,
our number 10 game of the year is Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Is that the subtitle? Did I get that right? Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
As you can see, there's some footage of that playing in the background.
Is that 4 or is that the one with the 2 ladies?
This is the
two ladies.
If you were watching the footage, Alex, you can see the 2 ladies, so you would know the answer. But
is this the cutscene where she inadvertently, or not inadvertently?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize that when I loaded this.
One lady takes a peek at the other lady's tits while they're talking.
Oh no, that is not this one.
It's like
that's a different
someone
one.
Pointed that out. I'm like, she totally is doing that. Holy shit!
Oh yeah, I saw that on Twitter.
Is that a mocap thing or a intentional by the game developer?
Well, they're standing facing the same direction.
Uh-huh.
And just at some point in the conversation,
Sorry, sometimes you just gotta check it out, you know.
Not Chloe, the other one, the other lady. Nadine just kind of looks sideways and down at the same time, and you're like, she's looking totally at her chest.
No, this is the cutscene where we find out that Chloe's dad is dead. Spoilers.
Well, this is like the first thing that happens, one of the first things that happens in the game, right?
No, this
is actually pretty significant.
Actually,
I would say all of this footage that I've captured for all these various games, most of it is like post-game stuff, because that's what I have, because I finished the games in most cases.
So the thing that's nice about Uncharted is you can pick any chapter after you've finished it. You can just load up any spot in the game, basically, like pretty much any checkpoint. So I just picked the one where I remember doing like a lot of the really cool, fun platforming with the vistas and the cool looking stuff. So that's what
nice
this
vistas.
is.
Yeah, this is a good section for that, for sure.
This game, it was originally going to be a piece of it's standalone DLC. Do we still call it that? Is that what we still call it? Standalone DLC for.
This and Hellblade are kind of
like
the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's like a side story. That's
Uncharted
shorter.
Gaiden.
Uncharted,
yeah, exactly. Like
it was
focused
originally going to be
story.
a piece of DLC for Uncharted 4, and if you bought the season pass while it was available for Uncharted 4, you got this for free.
Yeah.
But apparently, as they were working on it, it sort of like expanded and expanded and expanded to the point where like I just have this on a separate disc from Uncharted 4. So you play as sort of fan favorites. Here's me dying. Let's play as fan favorites. Fan favorite Chloe.
Spoiler: one of the main characters dies.
Fan favorite if the fan Chloe in question is not friend of the podcast, Anthony's wife Abby.
Oh, that's right. Abby hates Chloe.
Hates Chloe.
Which one's Chloe? Is that Claudia Black?
Claudia Black. Yeah, okay. Claudia Black.
Yeah. I like her because she's played by Claudia Black. I don't know anything about Uncharted, but
she's the
Chloe,
female interest in 2.
Okay.
Yeah, she takes over seemingly in Uncharted 2, and the main female from Uncharted 1 doesn't show up for a long time. She ends up eventually showing up, but by that point, Abby was so pissed off that there was no going back.
Yeah, and then Nadine is actually one of the main antagonists. Yeah, she double crosses him.
Yeah,
and Nadine is one of the main antagonists of Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I thought when it was announced and everything, I thought you played as both of them, that you would switch back and forth, but you don't. You only play as Chloe. But it plays much like an Uncharted game, and it's written much like an Uncharted game, climbing and shooting. The section that everybody was sort of wowed by is there's this sort of kind of open world. The chapter right before this is sort of a mini open world map where you have to find a certain number of things, and you can kind of just drive around.
Chunk of the playtime.
Yeah, it's about, depending on how much of it you do, it's like a third to half of the game is this kind of open world section towards the middle.
Yeah, it depends on whether you get all the Gugas and stuff, because there's a big open world area, and it's like, oh, there are N, I can't remember what N is, 10 or so, MacGuffins that are spread around, and you can advance without getting all of them, but if you do get all of them, then you get a bonus thing, so of course...
Right,
you got to get all of them.
So I did, and you get the bonus thing.
Me too.
And yeah.
Also, if the open world is good, then you just want to spend time exploring, which is really what.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the reward for me in that style of game.
Yeah, exactly. And I voted for this game too. Just it wasn't only Joe.
Oh, that's right. You had it at like 10 or something, I think. And
I think so.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was in my top 5, and then Kurt had it towards the kind of the bottom. But I just really enjoyed it. I mean, I sort of marathoned it. I got it, and I think I was done with it probably within a week. It was one of those things where I just kind of couldn't put it down. I actually remember this was when so Twitch was doing the thing where they were, or no, sorry, Shout Factory was marathoning like every episode of Starcade, the arcade game show from the early 80s. And I was watching that marathon while playing this game sort of at the same time. And so it was just like that week in summer, it was like watching Starcade, playing Uncharted Lost Legacy. So I would say I enjoyed this sort of side story thing more than Uncharted 3. Probably when all said and done. but not as much as
interminable
2 or
as
4.
Uncharted 3.
Yeah, right. But I didn't enjoy it as much as 2 or 4. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. Like, if you haven't played 4 yet, play 4. But if you have played 4 and haven't played this and you liked 4, then you should play this.
Yeah, I've heard that this is much shorter than 4, and that makes me want to play this one instead of 4.
Yeah, that's true.
Same here.
That's true.
I still haven't played an Uncharted game, but this is the one I'm most interested in, mostly because there's always even people that like those games seem to feel fatigued by them by the time they're over, and this one being 2/3 of the length makes it seem like the one I might enjoy the most.
They're always just padded out by way too much combat.
Were you going to say something, Alex?
Well, I was just going to say, I played Uncharted 1 and 2, and I was like, yeah, I never need to do that ever again in my life. But then, they kept going, and I've never understood people who are like, yeah, dude, new Uncharted. I'm like, so? Who fucking cares?
I really like it. I don't know. I mean, I really like Indiana Jones. I really like...
I feel like there's not after 2 I'm like, yeah, there's nowhere else to go with this. But
that's kind of true. I mean, that's kind of true. 2 I think is probably the best. I haven't played 2 in a while.
Yeah.
So.
Same.
That's what I was going to say earlier was without having gone back and played any of them, I'd be like 2 for this.
Yeah. This looks like a really interesting space to explore. That's like the thing.
I think I've just become a Tomb Raider guy instead.
I liked Uncharted 4 a lot more than the Tomb Raider reboot, but I have not played Rise of the Tomb Raider. But I liked Uncharted 4 way more than the Tomb Raider reboot. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So that's Uncharted. It looks really nice. I would really like to. It's something that
and it looks really great.
If I had a PlayStation 4, I think that I would. Like I said, for whatever reason, I'm just more interested in this one than I have been in the previous ones, and
maybe because of the change.
Well, again, it's short enough. Maybe. It's cheap. It's short. So if that's the kind of 1-2 punch you're looking for, then this may be the one to do. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So also our number
nice
10
that you got a
game
clip
of the year.
Of
the
thing that always happens, which is you're climbing around for a few minutes and then invariably something breaks away.
Yep.
That's a really great visual.
Anyway,
that's a great shot to end on. All right, so our other number 10 game of the year, as voted on by Mr. Mike Ailes, is Dead Cells, which is not technically out yet. It was an early access game that came out in the early summer.
I call shenanigans.
That's cheating.
I mean, Kentucky Route Zero was the best game that came out in 2013, and it's still not done yet.
And it was only
2012.
60% done back then. Or
whatever. But Kentucky Route Zero isn't in early access, right? Dead Cells is still in early access.
Just episodic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point that's a super immaterial, unimportant distinction. Dead Cells is a game that plays better than most finished games do. In fact, I would say that.
I think it's totally fine if you say that it's an early access. The version of it that I have played here is super great, and I'm totally stoked on it.
I mean, here's the thing: if Dead Cells winds up being really significantly better by the end of this year, then fucking great, because it's already really high on my list. And the game that I played, which was an early access, it felt basically complete to me, right? It's a roguelike, and you guys know I love me a good roguelike, which means it's also really
Isn't
hard.
It a roguelike?
You could, I prefer that term.
Rogue Legacy like.
I prefer,
oh my god.
I prefer roguelike to roguelite anyway.
This game is. I mean, this.
But then
is
you'll have to reset, and everything will be procedurally.
This game,
fuck, you're right. God damn it.
This game is Rogue Legacy, straight up.
Yeah, only good.
Is it? I don't know if it's. Rogue Legacy is a great game, and this is also
a
really good game.
Rogue Legacy is a great idea. Great soundtrack.
This delivers on that idea in your
Absolutely.
estimation?
This is Rogue Legacy that plays more like one of those Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
It plays better than any Castlevania game.
The dodging in this is definitely better because it is a roll dodge instead of a backstep, so you can roll through attacks and stuff. It's really
Joe. I love Castlevania games, but you don't play them for the super tight gameplay.
Would you describe this as the Dark Souls
not the?
Oh gosh, shut up! Somebody mute Alex. kick him out of the.
I'm glad Alex showed up. I'm really happy.
It's a Metroidvania like.
Well, so it is because it has elements of that because the weapons are all so different. Like there's big heavy weapons and spears and bows and all kinds of an assortment of things that all. And there's different sub weapons. I don't have any here, but there's like saw blade traps and freezing bombs, which I think I just picked one of those up.
Arrow traps and
it's super
and then
pretty.
You can
and
also
I love the look
you can
of
like
the guy
throw
sort of
oil on the ground and light it on fire, and it makes a fire trap. And there's all kinds of
you can freeze water or electrocute enemies that are in the water.
Yeah,
like so you just picked up an ice grenade in the video that we're watching now, and now you have a saw blade trap. So at any given time, you typically have 4 different weapons available to you, and just the variety and just the flow of the combat just feels so good. The enemies are brutal, but it's really skill based. So the better you get at the game, the more you can deal with them, even if you're under equipped. And then this game also gets past one of the biggest problems that most roguelikes have, which is that like once you get kind of good at these games, then you find yourself just running through the first stage over and over again and being really bored while you wait to get to the parts that are challenging and interesting. And this game gets around that by giving you the option to blaze through the early stages to unlock these kind of like time sealed doors that if you can make it to the second or third stage really quickly, you can unlock a door that will seal itself after a few minutes, and inside there are a bunch of power-ups and like money and things like that.
Brilliant.
To kind of compensate for the fact that you weren't stripping the first few levels bare to get everything.
It's a really brilliant thing.
That's a great idea.
And those runs are thrilling. It's just like...
So wait, let me make sure. So you're saying basically you speed run it like once you've been through it a few times? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Kind of, yeah.
But
you're not speed running, but then they give you a reward for not having
it means that your loot level, your power level is where it should be if you'd spent 10 minutes on the first level, but instead you can just run through it in 2 minutes. It means that you're not sort of gimping yourself as you
handicapping yourself for later.
Okay, that's cool.
Binding of Isaac is an amazing game. I voted for #1 the year it came out, and I stand by that decision. But I stopped playing that game eventually because what would happen would be I'd get a dollar bill and I'd have $100 basically, and I'd get it to a casino, and I'd be like, well, shit, the only move that makes sense for me to do right now is to sit here and use up all of my money until I've spent every single one, and it was so boring.
Try to roll for the best weapons and the best upgrades and stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's like I can keep getting more soul hearts and more upgrades and things like that, so I guess I should do it. And this game gets around that by giving you a totally different way to play it, which is just like move like hell and rewarding you for that. And those runs feel so super different from the ones where you're playing methodically.
It's really hard. Like I don't know
really
if you
played
it recently,
scary,
Mike, but it's like since I bought this during the summer sale and played a bunch of it, and then when I went back to it now, like it's much harder now than it was like 8 months ago.
I think that when I played it, it was a lot more like this. So you're seeing in your run here, we're seeing some of the new stuff, like the mutations are new, and the way that you upgrade your statistics is new, but everything else about this is very similar to the state that it was in when I played it. And it is a really hard game, and enemies hit like trucks, and like it does have elements of Dark Souls and Bloodborne to it in that you can regain health that is lost by like going on the offensive.
You have an Estus Flask. Well, yeah, also you have an Estus Flask type of healing item. So when you go to a stage, you have 2 heals, and then when you finish the stage, you can replenish those 2 heals. But and enemies
and you
will
can eventually upgrade
drop,
your Estus Flask,
like pot roasts, Castlevania style or whatever.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it has Bloodborne's rally thing too. I'm seeing it now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
okay, good.
But like, so these enemies are pretty wussy. They're hitting you for almost a quarter of your health. There are enemies later in the game that will hit you for 2/3 of your health if you're not careful, like the really big ones. And then you got to make a decision really fast, which is like, do you want to try to fight to get that health back, or you just want to run the hell away before you get hit one more time and die? And I don't know. Just between the good controls and the different ways you can play, the huge variety of abilities you have at any given time. I just think this is one of the best roguelike games to come out in years.
Yeah, you can really there's a really big variety in the character builds you can have as well. Like I'm sure I picked some up at this point, but there's like you hit these vials that have like you can choose to upgrade your red weapons, your green weapons, or your purple weapons. If you look at the weapon bar at the bottom there, you can see different weapons are associated with different damage types. And like you can get more health, or you can get health regeneration, or you can do more damage with your grenades or your traps or your main weapons. And so you can like kind of change the way that you build your character every run. It's really
You're playing
really
this
cool.
with a controller.
You better, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. It also looks really good. Like this is kind of a boring looking level. This was the first time I'd been in the sewers, I think. can.
Yeah, but look at that animation. Like, so here's the thing: it isn't really access.
So how long is a successful run of this? That's always the question with games.
Depends
like
how good you are. I've beaten the first boss of the game, but never the second. The times that I've beaten the first boss, it's taken me like maybe 20 or 30 minutes to get to him and beat him. There's a time door that you can only open if you beat that first boss in less than 10 minutes. So clearly, someone who really knows what they're doing can, just charge through the first couple areas, beat that boss, and then open that door. And doing so gets you like special like blueprints for new items like that I can't unlock yet.
Yeah, you can also save progress during a run, so you can like put it on hold and come back to it. Yeah, it's not super harsh in that way. I mean, like classic Rogue is like that, right? Like you can save your progress in a run. You just it resets when you die.
My best run ever, I got to
the cells in the title of this is like your upgrade system. That's how you unlock new weapons and things for you to have access to during the dungeons and stuff.
So how much? You just said you retrieved gold. How much of your gold do you retrieve when
up to
6,000? That's the thing you can upgrade. Actually, there aren't very many upgrades in this game that make your character better. So it's actually not entirely like Rogue Legacy, because for the most part you start off at the same power level you always have. But there are a few things you can gradually improve.
Some powers that will get you to different levels or get you to treasure chests that you can't access otherwise.
But you're never upgrading like your base hit points or the damage that you do. Like, you can upgrade the number of charges to your Estus flask. You get to upgrade.
I think you can. I don't know if this was in it when you played it, but there's a skill you can pick that gives you better. Like when you start a level, you can pick between a bow or a shield, and there's an upgrade you can pick that will give you a better bow or a better shield.
It's not better. It's random.
Right. Well, it'll be better than what you start with, which is like the worst bow and the worst shield in the game.
Yeah, you're supposed to get that pretty early, and after that, you just start every run with a selection of random items available to you, and you pick 2 of the 3 that are there. Anyway, it's a really great game.
It's good, for sure.
Didn't I just hear that it's coming to consoles?
It's coming to Switch eventually. This would be an amazing Switch game. So, give it a shot.
Yeah, it's good.
I probably will when it comes
to
Switch.
It's really hard. I made it to the last boss one time.
To the last boss, you said?
Well, like at the time that I was playing it, there were only 2 bosses, so the final boss was fucking brutal. Oh my god!
All right, so our number 10 video game of 2017 is Fire Pro Wrestling World.
Who voted for that?
It was Mike, actually.
Guilty as charged.
I would have if I'd played it.
So,
Anthony.
Hi, Anthony Rogers.
Hi. Fire Pro is awesome.
Fire Pro Wrestling World is sort of the Fire Pro. Like it takes everything about every previous Fire Pro and makes it in they're talking about it now as if it's sort of like not a lifestyle game in the same way as Overwatch, but they're talking about it as if like they're not planning on doing another one of these. They're just going to keep adding shit to this one.
Are you saying it's like a Fire Pro Turducken or more like a Fire Pro Voltron?
It's more like a Fire Pro Voltron.
Okay.
I think it's more like a Fire Pro sourdough, right? Because it's never going to end.
Yeah, it's got there's a mother dough that that they just keep making more dough out of that one. So it's if you've played, this is going to sound more perhaps critical than I mean it to, but if you've played one Fire Pro game, you've kind of played them all in terms of mechanics, right? So like if
I'm watching this on the screen and I'm getting horrible flashbacks to the PS2 game where I got my ass kicked.
If you played Fire Pro, certainly if you played Fire Pro Returns for PS2, if you played Fire Pro on the Game Boy Advance,
I'll bring my Saturn over and we'll play the Fire Pro for that.
Sweet.
I mean, I also have Fire Pro 6-Man Scramble on the Saturn. I have a lot of Fire Pro games. They're all kind of the same. But so that's what you're getting into.
Right. But I mean, it's a good thing in this context because it's been a very long time since a Fire Pro game came out in the United States.
Right.
For like
the last one that came out was
fashion.
There was the Xbox Live.
We don't talk about that. Yeah, we don't talk about that.
I was going to say, it was garbage.
Right. And also it's made by some it's that's kind of a different thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's a different thing. We don't talk about that.
I mean, even that was like 5 years ago at this point, 5 or 6 years ago, probably
longer than that, I think. But
it's notable for that.
So, no
and
good
also,
ones, that's for sure.
Like this has Steam Workshop support, so I haven't actually played this, but I've watched the Giant Bomb guys,
which I think is so weird that you haven't played this.
Just like the stuff on the workshop is incredible. Just like all of the wrestlers, the wrestlers that you like all of the ones that have ever existed,
that one you like,
you can download
even the ones you don't like, the ones you hate.
Right, you can download 40 different versions of them, and they all look amazing, and the animations and the movesets are all there.
So my CPU
really cool.
bogged down really hard when I tried to capture footage for this. So Eric got some from the trial version.
Yes, this is a Japanese trial version, so you can see if it will run on your system.
Yeah. So, but what I was going to capture is from Steam Workshop. I have a Rey Mysterio in the full purple bodysuit, an Eddie Guerrero circa 1997, and even from Steam Workshop, I have the ring for Slim Jim's Halloween Havoc 1997. So I was gonna try to recreate the Eddie versus Rey Halloween Havoc 97 match and use that, but my between trying to capture at high quality and run the game, my now 7-year-old or 8-year-old processor just totally turns to shit. Yeah. So yes, it's tapped out.
Like I said, I haven't really played many of these games, but I would love to at some point. What it really needs is a good story mode for me to really get invested, because just playing arcade wrestling doesn't appeal to me that much. But a dumb Here Comes the Pain style story mode would get me there. Like the writing doesn't even have to be good; it just has to give me an excuse to. The storylines have to be on par with the mediocreest professional wrestling stories. I would be into it.
Right.
But what's really amazing about these games is the variety of characters and the animations and stuff for all the moves is really good, but there's tons of ring variations and match variations and weapons, and it's just it really encompasses the world of professional wrestling in a way that none of the other wrestling games do, and that's really great, especially given how absolute garbage the Aki games, or not the Aki games, who's doing the wrestling game?
2K.
Not 2K. Ukes. Yeah, the Ukes wrestling engine really has pretty much. It's worse than it was in the early 2000s in the PlayStation 2 games.
And apparently the Switch version of the most recent one is just a buggy mess.
I played 2K
a total garbage
15, I think, on PC because I got it for free in a bundle, and it's just so fucking terrible.
So my best friend and I got the PS2 one. And we did I guess there's a way to download all these characters from both Japanese wrestling and from all
it took a lot more work in that version.
But you put it on
you'd
a
have
memory
a Dex
card
drive and shit, and you'd put it on.
But we did it, and then we spent 2 months in the summer, every day he'd come home from work, and we would just sit on the couch and play this for an hour, because it's way more complex than any other wrestling game, but we got kind of good at it. And now what I'm finding when I'm watching this is I don't remember all the specifics of how to counter everything that's going on screen, but I really want to. It's I learned a skill a long time ago.
I remember doing that. I would like to do it some more.
Exactly.
Yeah. I took wrestling in college, and now I don't remember how to speak it.
6 years of wrestling classes, and now I can only.
It's about immersion. Alex. You got to go to wrestling.
Alex, I got to tell you, Alex, it's more like riding a bike than it is like learning a language. Because I feel like if I went to a show and got in the ring and worked out with some people before a show, I would feel pretty comfortable. I would probably get blown up. I'd get gassed right away and be sucking wind, but I would be able to call a spot and do a drop down and
you see the dude that
No,
do you
I'd
see
be
the dude in the crowd holding a sign that says "It's cool"?
It's cool.
Yeah, it's really good.
That's excellent.
So yeah, I mean, this is the thing that you know if you're into it or not, right? Like if you know
right.
and this came out of early access just about a week before the year ended.
Take that, Mike.
So I was going to leave it. If it had not gotten into full release, I would have left it off my list, honestly, because there were a lot of games that I liked this year. So I would have just been like, as a matter of convenience, I would have been like, well, it's still in early access, so it doesn't count. But it came out early access, so I feel like I had to put it in there. But I'm hoping, Eric, as you said, because in the PlayStation 2 one, you can sort of like book your own promotion. Like you can create a storyline and do all this stuff. And this version does not yet really have an analog to that. It has a challenge mode where you have to meet certain match criteria, match by match. But there's no narrative mode at all. So
cool.
But yeah.
Can I just say we kind of undersold the Steam Workshop aspect of this game, because I was just checking that out while you guys were talking. And there's like Chewbacca, RoboCop, Fit Trainer, Santa Claus. There's one just called Ostrich, which they made their torso super tiny and their arms like invisible. And so they're just like legs and a head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Never mind. This is the game of the year.
There's like Gundam robots. There's
we're out.
From fighting games. This is and there's 31,000 items on the Steam Workshop. Yep. So Vigo the Carpathian is there. Like
that's Billy Gunn's most recent gimmick.
I will say, Joe, I'm surprised you placed this on your list at all, given all this shit in the foreground.
Well, that's a steel cage, Mike. It's not the same thing.
I thought you had principles.
I do. My principles involve steel cages being okay.
It's the exception that proves the rule.
That's right.
Also, there's a transparency to it that makes it usable. Anyway, that's Fire Pro. Right. I'm going to get this at some point and play it. Hopefully, like I said, they put some kind of story mode in it, and then my interest will go from like intrigue to like, all right, I have to buy this now.
The PS4 version is coming out in, I think it's slated for spring or summer, and it's officially licensed by New Japan Pro Wrestling. So like, Okada and Kenny Omega and Satoshi Kojima and all these guys, the Young Bucks, are going to be in the PS4 version.
Cool.
Right, Joe, I got to cut you off if you want to go to bed before 3 in the morning.
Right, that's fine.
All right. So let's see. Also, our number 10 video game, 2017.
Jesus.
One year every time.
SteamWorld Dig 2.
Hey!
Which, speaking of Pathfinder games / Castle Metroidvanias / what was that other term you used?
I like exploration platformer.
Yeah.
Exploration platform.
Good.
Just go back.
Exploraformer.
Just watch the stream a month ago when we talked about this.
Yeah, we can keep this kind of brief, but 2017 sure was a year, and there were times when it was really nice to be able to just kind of curl up in the equivalent of like a nice warm blanket. And SteamWorld
I thought you were going to say the fetal position. So.
More or less.
It's kind of hard to play some games in that position. But
that's a box quote for you. SteamWorld Dig 2 is the fetal position of video games.
It's the sweet release you need. No, but it's just a super, like, if nothing else, it's a super pleasant game. Like, it looks good. It's got tons of charm. The music's great. But it's more than that, because it is like it plays super well. It's got a really interesting like upgrade progression, some super fun abilities that I have not seen in any other exploration platformer. And
one of the best hook shots in gaming.
Oh my god, that hook shot!
I played SteamWorld Dig.
Yeah.
Back in the day when everyone was falling all over themselves about how great it was.
Sorry, are we far enough removed from SteamWorld Dig 1 that we can refer to it as back in the day? Because
yeah, exactly.
2000.
It is a 3DS game.
12,
yeah,
it's like.
And I wasn't around. I was traveling when we did the coverage on this, and I hadn't had a chance to watch it. So I apologize if this was covered at the time. But I thought it was fine, and like there was good stuff in it, but I felt like it was just a little slow and so on. So I wondered if this changed up or was basically just another iteration on that
this
game.
Is like the Super Mario World to the Super Mario Brothers kind of comparison. Okay. They took the ball and ran it with it.
Okay.
And did much more with it.
It's really good.
Okay.
The
that
upgrade
increases
curve
my interest.
is a lot faster. Like you go from taking 3 hits to taking 1 hit to get through most of the soil types pretty quickly.
That's nice.
You're given
it just felt really slow.
Yeah, you're given a lot of options as to how you upgrade your character, and there's also just like a ton of powers that it's throwing at you all at once. There's also a much bigger variety in the environments. Like this one that I'm in is very, very early in the game. But there's like a grassy area, and there's a temple with lava and stuff, and it changes up the aesthetics like 3 or 4 different times.
Nice.
And there's just this is like SteamWorld Dig 1 was a really good concept for a game that was just kind of a little bit boring, and then this game is just better.
This is the
every
game.
single way that you
It's also really addicting, but it doesn't feel like a game that I would consider addicting. Except I would play it and look up, and suddenly it was like 2 hours later.
Yeah.
It's gonna get that
like,
next.
But I just got to get that one. Yeah, exactly. There's one more ore right there.
Yep. Collect that cog so I can get that next upgrade to make my jetpack a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got that really cool upgrade system, which is actually very similar to one we'll talk about later. But I think this game actually does a better job of giving you like a set number of points.
Nice little
foreshadowing.
Slot items into and out of up at that cog workbench that you keep not going to.
But so you have a great deal of flexibility in how you build your character, which is really good.
Nice.
It's
really cool. It's a big meaty game. It's not too long, but it is like maybe 12 hours long or so. But like the whole time, I think it's just super strong from start to finish.
I still think all the characters look really ugly.
I like the art style, but
I don't like the art style.
How do you feel about the music?
That's my only gripe. The music's fine.
Music's cool.
Some of the music is really good. El Huervo, who did some music for Hotline Miami, did a lot of the tracks for the soundtrack for this. So.
I'm serious, Kurt. I think this is one of the better games available on the Switch. And if you're just looking for something along these lines, it's really strong.
This is also I think that's this is one of the best this type of game that I've ever played. I think it's really good.
It was a good year for exploration platforms.
I think it's a very good year for those, because there's another one which is even better than this that came out this same year.
I was like listing off good Steam or Switch games for somebody over the holidays, and like I mentioned like, oh yeah, there's like at least 3 like totally solid games, and someone like listed off 2 and like what's the third? And I was like, this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Like solid. Yep.
Nice.
All right, so
let's move on.
All right, let's move on to our number.
Let's
10
go to number
game
10.
Of the year. Yeah, we'll move on to number 10 now, which is.
I can't believe we're starting the top 10 already.
Yeah.
Enough about that, but number 10.
Yeah, Nier Automata, which is I totally goosed my vote to make sure this was in the top 10.
Nier Automata Pia.
Because this game.
You're not supposed to play the system.
This, much like Persona 5, would have been my number 1 favorite game of the year if only the world in which it took place was better.
Dude, this game's dope.
Vacant.
It's such it's a vacant, empty world that takes several minutes to run through, and there's these invisible walls all over the place, and the map is really frustrating, and like you can see things that you should be able to, like I cannot count the number of times there was like a thing I wanted to go to, but I couldn't jump. Like there's a double jump in this game, and it's like this wall is like 2 feet high, so I should just be able to double jump over it, but I just fucking can't. The game just won't let me do it, and so it's just like
then you're like, is it because I'm in the wrong position? Because sometimes the camera's in one angle and sometimes it's another. Am I just doing it wrong, or is it not possible? Or
right? It's really frustrating. Unfortunately, this is made by Platinum, which in the combat itself is actually really pretty good. I think the camera is kind of dog shit. Like it tends to like rotate and put enemies in positions where you can't see them and stuff, but
so it's Platinum.
It's a little mashy, but you have like a light and heavy attack, and different combinations of button presses will spit out different combos, but there's a bunch of different weapons and stuff, and the combat itself is actually like fairly good. It's just like the combat scenario design is really not so great in a lot of cases. Also,
I have a question.
I want to get. I need to get this stuff off my chest before we talk about the story and all the other stuff, because.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. Is like, I know that you can see the trees, but like, have you checked out that forest that's like right there?
So the problem is you have to play this game about 15 hours before you get to the part where you can stop looking at the trees and start appreciating the forest. Which is a pretty big ask. I know it's like, so like you said,
it is
the invisible walls and the world design didn't bother you that much, and there's a lot of people that feel that way, but for me, like one of the things I like most in video games is exploring a space, and this is a game that gives me a space that is at once frustrating to explore because of how poorly designed it is, and also extremely unrewarding to explore because of how empty it is.
I think the difference
Can I say, Eric, that I really appreciate your opinion on this, and I think I've told you this before. because you're basically mimicking how I felt about the first game.
Yeah, I can't
which
even
not
imagine
nearly as many
trying to
people
play that.
played. Yeah. But like,
given how much of an improvement people who liked the first one say this is over it,
and yet everybody loved anyone who actually bothered to play it loved it at the time, except me.
Well, and me,
and
you and Mike. That's why I never played it, because you and Mike didn't like it, and
so like what you're saying.
But Anthony, here's
what I was saying.
So here's my issue with that, is that one of the reasons. So the first game had kind of crummy gameplay, but the other thing was that neither you nor I was very impressed by the story, right?
Right.
I think everyone was like, "Oh, you got to play it because the story's just so amazing."
Yeah, you got to get all the way to the end, and then started a second file, and it was,
And I think we both went through that, and we're like, "This story is okay for people who have not heard a lot of stories." You know, like if I was,
like if you've never read a book, you might think
if I was
the
18, I think this was fucking amazing. But no, I'm like, I'm 30 something, and in there,
right. That's how I feel about most video games.
Near Automata.
So, but now what I'm hearing is that this game has that story, and that like it's just like, oh man, it's so good.
It's pretty good.
And so I'm really trying to talk myself out of just signing up for another round of masochism. And every time I
I
know about how long it takes to get to the good
part. If you put it on easy, it's boring and you can get through it. I played it through it on medium. And it was not good enough to it just meant everything lived longer, but it wasn't really a challenge.
Okay, so you don't get anything more out of the combat?
I should have played it on easy for one thing. That probably would have helped a little bit, but it definitely feels like I'm just trying to get to the
this is where we like wildly differ. Is you're like, the world sucks, and I'm like, yeah, it does, but I don't know. First of all, actually,
some of this stuff, like the design combat scenarios, like this first chapter where I am,
cool.
it's really good. Like the factory is a little bit empty, and it's kind of ugly because the graphics, like the character designs, the character models are very good, but the backgrounds look like something from 10 years ago. But like,
now,
some
which
of these
one are you on
designs
screen? Are you the big wheel?
Yeah, I'm the giant big wheel with all the buckets on it.
He's the tiny flying guy.
Wow, how many times did a big wheel with buckets try to kill you this year?
In Nier Automata alone, it was like 10 times.
Oh jeez, see again. Now I'm discouraged more.
But yeah, so the designed spaces, what few of them there are. There's like this factory. There's
the carnival.
There's the carnival, which is like fucking.
There's the desert. The desert's cool.
The desert's
I like the desert.
I mean, it's a desert, so it's really boring, but it is.
Yeah.
It's a desert.
But it's supposed
cool how. So here's the thing. This is what I was gonna get at. Is you're like, the world sucks, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. But it's like the way the controls and the way your character moves and like fights feels so good.
Whoa.
Oh, you skipped a little bit there, but that shit fits.
Whoa.
Like that stuff feels so good. That like all that shit you're talking about doesn't matter. Like none of that matters. Like I don't give a shit.
It definitely matters. It mattered a
definitely
lot.
matters.
I really hated
it
the
way
first 10
matters.
or so hours of playing it.
Opinions are divided as to whether it matters.
Extremely frustrated by it.
Okay, fine. Let's walk that back a bit. That does not matter to me.
Okay. Well, there's also a bunch of shooter sections. Yeah. So anyway,
looks like Ikaruga, and that looks dope.
It's
the shooter section is dope. Are cool.
Some of them are pretty boring because they're so easy. But anyway, let's talk about the characters and the story a little bit, because that's really the meat of the game.
Should Mike and I take our headphones off this particular segment?
I'm not gonna bother giving a plot.
We don't have enough time for to spoil everything.
We don't have time for that.
We don't have time.
But I will say that there's a ton of like science fiction films and books that are about like exploring themes of humanity and what it means to be human via like robots or androids or whatever. And where most of those are, a lot of that stuff is bad. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like Bicentennial Man or whatever. Like, it's just like, because those.
I haven't seen the movie, but Isaac Asimov is a pretty good author.
I'm talking about the
speaking.
Robin Williams movie, which I haven't read the book, but where a lot of that stuff falls short is that like they have this sort of defined set of parameters for what it means to be a person. And this game, what really stands out about this is that it sort of, it pulls back another layer and tries to find it really questions what those parameters even are. Like all the people in
not like is a robot a human, but is a human
a human? Like what like not even like, yeah, it's not like, can a robot be a person, or like what is the, like, not even what are the set of parameters, but like to examine the set of parameters that we try to understand. You know what I mean? It's like, it's these like all these characters that are just trying to sort of connect to one another in a way. And and also the story of these two main characters is one of the most tragic, saddest, like I was kind of infuriated when they finally pull back and show like what the relationship between them actually is, because it's, like I said, it's one of the most tragic relationships I've ever seen in a work of fiction. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's some really powerful stuff just about the various ways that different people interact, and then it does a really good job of encompassing like a lot of different views on things. It's a hard thing to talk like there have been games like Spec Ops or I think Undertale was a much better example of this, but there's been games that like were like critically examining like humanity and people's relationships to each other within the context of video games, but none of them have ever like managed to encompass as many different like philosophies and as many different like ways of looking at people as Nier Automata does. And I think that's like, I would read a book about all the different themes that this game manages to get its fingers into, because there's just like a fucking mountain of them. There's like those big robots that I was fighting in the video earlier, the ones with the bucket wheel arms, like you get to talk to one of them, and there's two named ones, and they're named Marx and Engels. So they're like, like the guys that wrote the Communist Manifesto are literally like the means of production. And it's just like in the group of machines that they represent, definitely borrow a lot of things from that worldview, but there's a bunch of other philosophers that show up in the side quests. Most of them get dunked on for being the shitty assholes that they were. It's such a, the breadth of themes and things that this game sort of delves into is like, it's really fucking amazing. But unfortunately I just didn't enjoy playing it quite enough to put it higher on my list. But I think that, like you can see here in some of this video, like that looks like a thing I should be able to go into, but I can't. But there's other places where I can go into things that look like that.
Oh, I hate that.
It's really frustrating.
Oh man.
Yep.
But my God, man, some of the story stuff is really brilliant, and it's also, but it can be really beautiful as well. Like it's
I think it looks good. Like
the forest area is really nice. Like the city looks really good. Yeah. Yep. That's I didn't have as many problems with the world like Eric did, but for the most part, if you like are following side quests and like story quests and things like that, the game will lead you to the areas you actually can go to. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to worry about like, where is the invisible wall? It's like, well, the game just tells you, right? Like, so
but you give me a space to explore, and then constantly like slap me in the face for trying to explore it, and it's just really frustrating.
You're definitely not wrong. Like, it is shitty that way, but like I kind of got it in my headspace early in the game that like, oh, this game isn't like a true open world game, and then that was never an issue.
It should have been. But, if it was a better open, like it needs. The thing is, because of all the different factions involved and the way that they all interact with each other, it kind of needs to be an open world game, because you need that. Yeah. Like you need to give those different like ways of being like space. It sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's like a key element of The Witcher 3 is how much like space each of the kingdoms has to like build the like all the weird political factions and things that provide all these moving pieces that make that such an interesting world. And like those things, if it wasn't an open world, if it was just like designed levels, then you don't get the same amount of like, then they're just, instead of being a place where those ideas can exist, then it's just them telling you what they think about things. It's just exposition.
Somewhere where you see factions, as opposed to going and finding the villages for each of them and meeting the people.
Right. So Nier just doesn't, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't have had the same emotional impact on me, I think, if it had just been just designed levels with exposition and stuff. I don't, like I said, I really had mixed feelings about it as a game, but like I cried like 15 times while playing it. It's just, there's like just so many different things where I was like screaming at the screen for the bad thing to not happen to the person that I liked. And it just,
oh my God. I did hear them describe
really
one section
in some ways.
It's super. I mean, it's a game that's like the most of its major themes are about like connecting with people and learning, like trying to grow up, like growing up without parents, kind of like there's a lot of things about that, about like trying to find yourself and understand your place in the world and things like that when you like, and there's a lot of really like deep themes in it, but then also the game's just got like a super weird sense of humor too. Yeah. So it's like this weird, it's like it's literally an emotional roller coaster because you're
the
like
weird machines that are like, there's one scene where that's kind of infamous where the machines, which are those little robot guys that are running around, were like, they're not violent and they're like pantomiming having sex with each other because so like the plot of the game, which they very smartly don't spend hardly any time actually talking about, is that these androids, which is what you play as, were meant to like steward the very last pieces of humanity, but at a certain point aliens showed up and attacked the earth and left all these machines to like go to war with the androids. And so this war has been going on for like thousands of years, and the machines sort of lose their way at a certain point and become obsessed with humanity. And so like that's the lens that this game spends a lot of time looking at human beings through. And so it's like this really weird, sad thing of, like I said, it spends a lot of time not just talking about whether or not like machines are humans, but also like what are the things that we do that makes us human, you know, like in all the different ways that we try to connect with each other via that. And it's just, there's, like I said, there's some really amazing things in it. It's definitely, it's a game where the emotions of the characters are the things that, like, those are the crescendos in the story, are like what the characters feel, and all the big weird plot stuff kind of falls into the background. Whereas a lot of video games, the big weird plot stuff is just kind of all there is, and it's just like characters screaming at each other. This is definitely a thing that manages to get that, like, put it in the opposite perspective. Anyway, there's something very special about Nier, and I wish that the budget had been bigger and they'd been maybe given a little bit more time to flesh out the world and fix some of the flaws. But
well, this one, like, I think was the sleeper hit of the year
for sure.
So they're definitely going to have more of a budget next time.
It made a shitload of money. Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to make another Nier, but like Yoko Taro, the guy who like directed this game, is like already working on another game. So
some other weird ass thing.
If it's not Nier,
what's going to stop him? He'll just be like, whatever. 10,000 years later.
It's a theme that he like he spends a lot of time examining the relationship of like people that play video games and the violence in video games, that's something like he handles very, very well.
Like spends a lot of time being just super fucking nihilistic,
right? The androids
super fucking weird, right? Like
when
there's
the
another
androids fight, they feel pleasure, and it's like, well, you know, like that's exactly what we're doing. But it's not. It's like that's like a side theme. It's not heavy-handed like it was in Spec Ops or whatever. Anyway, there's something really special.
Also,
about it
I don't think this game forces you to like firebomb a bunch of innocent people like Spec Ops does.
And then chides you for it.
Yeah.
Like you had a choice. That's why Undertale did that better than both this game and Spec Ops and anything else that I've played. That and actually Hotline
But Undertale
Miami,
doesn't force you to.
Well, no, that's why Undertale is so great, right? Is like if you're an asshole, then the game says, "Hey, stop being such a fucking asshole." And if you're nice, then the game's like, "Hey, it's great that you're nice," and like that makes the choices feel meaningful.
All right, Eric, we got to move on to your next anime game here.
Yeah. I just want to say very quickly, one other thing I didn't like about this game is that you spend most of the game staring at like an ostensibly underage girl's ass, and I'm just.
Well, I mean, she's an android, so I don't think she's underage, either, is she? But the character design is fine. But it's more that when you're running around, like the camera constantly pans low, so you can get panty shots and stuff. I mean, it's in the grand scheme of video games, it's a pretty minor offense, but for a game that is so like has such a mature and
it is, but when you're trying to be profound and you're also like, here's this butt,
right? Exactly. Like, okay. That's what I was going to say. It undercuts some of the other stuff. Unfortunately.
Well, also there's kind of, without like spoiling too much, there's like some themes about like
well, like they're constantly talking about how they're
God damn it, I can't spoil anything.
How they're in the service of humanity, and so she's kind of dressed like a gothic Lolita maid because like that's her job, is to be in the service of humans. So it's like it kind of makes sense. But also Yoko Taro has also just said that he likes looking at sexy girls in high heels, and that's why part of the reason why her character design is that. So it's like,
yeah, he's just an interesting guy.
It's a frustrating thing, but
he's the guy with the helmet, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's Emil, dude. It's a character in the game.
Yeah. Anyway, that's near. We'll move on.
Well, wait, real super quick, because we are way over on time. The soundtrack's fucking incredible, and the last boss fight is like in the last playthrough is like fucking insane. It's so good.
This and Persona 5 both have amazing soundtracks. I don't think I mentioned that when I did Persona 5.
Yeah,
it's got that weird,
that
crazy electro.
You did. I think you did.
I agree. That's the only good thing I took from that game.
Speaking of awesome soundtracks, our number 9 game of the year.
Finally, we cracked the top 10.
Danganronpa V3, which is the third mainline Danganronpa game, and also it's there's a bunch of side stories and stuff. So the first Danganronpa is like a visual novel mixed with like an investigation thing that also does a bunch of weird mini games, and these class trials. So you start out. There's 12 people, and they get involved in this thing called the Killing Game, where it's kind of like the TV show Survivor or something, where like, but the characters, in order to advance and get out of the situation that they're trapped in, they have to kill each other. And so each character, like, it starts off with them being all like, oh no, we're not going to kill each other, and then this evil bear named Monokuma gives them motivations to murder each other. And then the rules of the game are basically that the rest of the students, when somebody is murdered, the rest of the students have to figure out who was the culprit and out him, and then that person is executed. And if they're unable to do that, then the person that was the murderer gets to go free and everybody else is executed. And that's the framework for all of the Danganronpa games. As you can see, Monokuma returns. This is actually footage from the demo, because you can see Makoto, who's the character from the first game, and Hajime, who's the main character from the second game, is here.
They're not in that game, actually.
No, they're not.
I thought it was weird to see Makoto.
No, they aren't actually in the game. So the first game I liked a whole lot. I think it's really good. I think that the twist at the end is kind of dumb, but the murders are all pretty fun to solve. And this is the class trial, where you're like the characters say things, and then you have to like pick a piece of evidence to dispute the thing that they're saying. But the presentation is really amazing. The art is really great. And like,
objection,
kind of what draws, but it's also like a visual novel. So it's like a 30 to 40 hour game, and you spend most of your time just talking to the characters. The first game, the characters were so, the cases were pretty good, and the overall mystery behind everything was good enough to sort of pull me through, and I really enjoyed it. The second game, the characters all suck. And
nice.
The characters.
So you're glad to see them die?
So yeah, kind of like there was nobody to really root for. This game ended up getting my third in my top 10, because I liked all of the characters for the most part. I think that in general, the characters are all, with a couple of exceptions, which, I mean, you need somebody in there to kind of wreak havoc and sort of sow seeds of doubt and stuff. But the characters in this game were just, they were better written, and B, they were just more interesting, more pleasant characters to spend 40 hours with. And the central mystery of it is also really good. Like at the end of the game, it kind of like almost breaks the fourth wall, and then pulls back on that, and like pulls everything back into the world of Danganronpa in a way that was really clever. Like it's hard for a game or a book or anything to break the fourth wall in a really interesting way in 2018. Like that's a trope that's kind of been done to death, but I think this game does it in a way that's really, really, really clever and original. And one of the big problems with visual novels is that it's kind of boring to just like go through reams of dialogue. And so the way that this breaks this up with the class trials and the investigation sequences makes that really good. But I love the style. I thought that the writing was all really good. The characters that are total shitheads are meant to be shitheads in a way that you're supposed to hate. And even them, like Miyu here, who drops a bunch of C-bombs and acts like a total asshole most of the time, I even ended up kind of liking despite all of that. Like the characters, in a lot of cases, they're flawed and dislikable, but like it's in a way that feels like people are flawed and you have mixed feelings about them. So I think this is definitely the best in the Danganronpa series. It's kind of like meant as a reboot after some of the missteps of the second game, but it still like incorporates some of that stuff. So I don't know if I could recommend that you would play this without having played at least the first one, but you could probably skip the second one if it's something that you're interested in. It's a hard thing to, it's a hard ask given how long they are, but I enjoyed this one a whole hell of a lot. So that's Danganronpa 3 or V3. Sure. The V is important. It's
not enough poetry.
And interesting. Yeah, not enough poetry. Definitely the strongest in that series. Let's see. Next up at number 8, we have a little Hollow
Wait,
Knight.
I missed the beginning. Did that game make the list?
What's that? Danganronpa? That was number 9.
The one with the poetry.
It got an honorable mention.
It was also getting votes.
Yeah. So Hollow Knight. What's up with Hollow Knight, Mike?
So it's an exploration platformer.
The Metroidvania.
Is it a roguelike?
It is not a roguelike, even a little bit.
Get the fuck out. No, just...
Is it like a roguelike?
It's a little bit like... No. It borrows a lot of stuff from Dark Souls mechanically and thematically.
Would you say it's the Dark Souls of exploration platform?
Okay. So everyone knows that since indie games became a big thing, there have been like 75 Metroidvanias a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who really likes that genre, I play a bunch of them every year. And the problem is that almost all of them kind of fall flat for me. Like they're all kind of like imitations or unoriginal, or just don't really kind of pull it off in a way that I find satisfying. And this is the first one that I've played in a couple of years that I feel is really kind of special. There's just something about the world design and the cohesiveness of the art style, and just the little different things that it does with the map and the way that you explore the world. That I find super interesting. Oh my god, is that how you use that ability?
Which one?
The little flappy thing that you're doing there? No, that's the double jump.
That's a double jump.
So the first thing you notice when you play this game is you go down into the cave and you start exploring, and instead of having a classic Super Metroid like map up in the corner of your screen with little boxes that fill in as you go around, you have no map at all. And this is kind of troubling. This is troubling for a little while, and then eventually you meet what's his name? Cornifer,
yeah.
Cornifer, the map
is
guy.
Is he a tree?
No, he is not. He's a bug. Because everything in this game is a bug.
No, that's Conifer.
Sorry, buddy. He is not. He's not a tree. And he sells you a map. And the second thing you notice is that you now have a map that is a static map, and you look at it and it's like, oh, I don't know where I am, and like it's not filling out as I explore things.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have to earn your way up to having a more dynamic map by getting money, going back up to the surface, and buying like different markers for your map and things like that. So if you want to know where the save points are, you've got to go to the store up the top and you got to buy the save point pins that you stick in your map. And your map doesn't update until you get to a save point. So what happens is that you spend a lot of time exploring, not really having any idea where you are, because every time you get into a new area, you're no longer on your map, and you won't have a chance to.
You also have to unlock the GPS function on the map, which is another thing games always give you for free, but this game doesn't.
Yeah, and that takes one of your ability slots, so you're actually incentivized to not use it.
Yep.
Which is normally not a big deal if you're in areas that you've been kind of exploring, but when you're in a new place, then sometimes it can actually be really confusing. Like, you'll explore for half an hour, you get to a bench, and then your guy fills in the map, and then you're like, okay, here's the map. I only have a very vague idea of where I am at this point on this map.
Yeah.
And so, like, I find that the game gives you a sense of isolation and exploration, and kind of like the danger of exploration that you don't get out of those games normally.
Yep.
This whole like sense of like pushing into the unknown. nonstop, and just being kind of like, well, geez, like, should I go farther? Should I turn back? Like, geez, it's been a long time since I was close to a save point. I guess I should just keep going and hope that I find like a save point or like a fast travel point or something.
There's much like Dark Souls. There's only one form of currency, and when you die, you drop it all, and then you have to do a corpse run to get that stuff back. So it's not just Dark Souls, but like old MMOs.
You drop it all.
Like
you drop it all. It's not like Shovel Knight where you drop half or whatever.
Drop everything. Now, it's unfortunately it's pretty generous. Much like Dark Souls, it's pretty generous with the amount of that currency that you get. So it's not a huge deal if you lose it.
It's also pretty easy to get it back. You actually have to fight.
Yeah, I was gonna say
you have to fight your spirit when you die. Like when you go back to the place where you died, there'll be like a malevolent of you there, but it's actually pretty easy.
Yeah,
they do that in that new Mummy.
The Mummy game did that too. Right?
This game came first.
Yep.
Oh shit!
This one.
That's fire.
Which one has a better soundtrack, Mike?
The Mummy.
They both have really
the
good
Mummy soundtrack is so good.
This game is mostly like really light piano stuff, but it sounds really amazing and fits.
Oh my god, you have so many upgrade slots. I've been playing this game for 10 hours and I have 4.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems with this game I found is that once you have unlocked most of the map, it takes it is very, very stingy with the amount of fast travel points that it gives you.
And the map is big.
The map is fucking huge. And this is like a 20 to 25 hour long game. And
oh my god, there's so much more than I haven't.
Yeah, one of the reasons that this didn't wind up higher on my list is just that, like, at some point it should have given you the ability to use those benches, the save points, as fast travel system. But instead it sort of limits you to like 10 fast travel points, which means sometimes it takes several minutes to get to a new place that you want to explore, or like any of these games, like you have to earn the double jump, you have to earn the wall jump.
I've been playing for 10 hours and I still don't have the double jump.
Yeah, it's the
you just unsold me on this game. Fuck it.
It's a really
I'm
good,
out.
I really like the combat.
Alex
also
loves the double jump.
Hell yeah, dude! Double jump and air dash. Hell yeah.
Let me resell you on this game by saying that this game has like the down thrust from the Adventure of Link. Only you can chain it, so you can like bounce infinitely on enemies' heads, and it takes.
Yo, dog! I played DuckTales before. I don't need that again.
It's kind of like.
But do you need a double jump again?
But unlike DuckTales, you actually have to hit the button and time it, so like it takes.
Oh my god, I really like that he looks at his map when you pull up the map.
Yeah, you look up the map and then you walk along.
That's amazing.
There's a lot of great touches.
Time doesn't stop either. Like you have to be standing on solid ground and in a safe position to look at your map.
There's
It's super charming.
Little weird characters that just show up in the overworld that you talk to, and like they will reoccur in different areas. Like you'll bump into them multiple times and sort of get to know them that way.
What's weird about it is that like it's so good at giving you that sense of isolation as you're exploring, but the world is actually not empty in a way that you don't get out of a whole lot of these games.
Yeah.
So that stuff like accentuates the isolation, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, whenever you find someone, you're just like, oh, what are you doing?
Oh my god,
it pops the tension for a few seconds, and it feels really good. Yeah, like this.
And like, it's a little bit monochromatic, but the art style is really nice, and you do find places that look different enough that like they really pop, because so much of the game is kind of this shades of black and white and gray.
Here, I'll skip ahead to the village.
Too much stuff in the foreground, though. Am I right?
It's not so much of a problem. Anyway, it's really great. It really it makes you earn some things that you don't normally have to earn in these games, and that can be a big turnoff for people. I know
it's demanding in a way that like I'm not always willing to fire it up, because I know that I'm gonna have to kind of work for it, as opposed to like SteamWorld Dig, which was just like, oh man, this is so easy.
That's
like
a really good comparison.
I can just, the barrier to entry is so low. I think if the game, like you said, the fast travel points are too spread out and the world is so huge and the game is so long, that I think it winds up maybe getting past the sweet spot for me. Like, I would kind of like to be done with the game at this point, like after 10, 12 hours.
There's multiple endings also. Like there's like a bad ending. You have to find a bunch of secret stuff to get.
You become Dracula.
Endings. Yes, that's what happened.
Dude, that boss fight's tight though.
This actually takes place.
You go into the mirror.
Yeah, this actually takes place in modern times. It's just you don't find out about it until he jumps out of his tower.
So when you get the good ending, you find out that the night was full.
Yeah, I love all the character designs. I think it's really beautiful.
It should be said that where I'm at this point, the secret is you're not the Hollow Knight.
What?
Oh,
I almost asked.
I love
now,
this guy.
Now I don't need to
return it.
This guy that picks you up in this fast travel thing.
Wait,
looks like
I've lost track of my. Wait, let's see here. So it takes a long time for a double jump, but it looks pretty. But
you don't have to earn the down thrust. You can pogo on enemies' heads.
But you can't pogo
it's got
because
that,
it requires timing.
Right, you can't pogo like duck. Well, you can. You just have to time it properly. Yeah.
And so there are places where like you do a room filled with spikes, and you can pogo off the spikes to get to the other end of the room, but that involves you actually pushing the sword button at the right time for every bounce you want to make.
There are actual secret areas that would be super easy to access with the wall climb or the double jump that you can access just by like luring enemies into place and sequence breaking by jumping off their heads and slashing and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of. I would say that this game is so big and the world is so non-linear in a lot of ways that not everybody's playthrough of this is going to be slightly different. They're going to unlock the different powers in a slightly different order.
I'm just baffled by like how many new areas I keep finding.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I've kind of lost the critical path at this point. Just like everywhere I go, there's new huge areas that I can explore that I haven't seen before. It's just kind of like, all right, well, not out of stuff to do, even though I have no idea where I should be going at this point.
Boss fights are really good too.
The boss fights are good. They're hard.
Yeah.
Those Mantis Lords, fuck.
Yeah, the Mantis Lords are really fucking hard.
I got them eventually.
This is one that it's coming to Switch, and I plan.
It would be a great.
Oh, that's why I haven't played it yet.
Coming soon.
That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna wait for the Switch version, but they kept pushing it back. Like this came out early last year, and then it was like the Switch version maybe in the summer, and then it was like the Switch version maybe in the fall, maybe in the winter, and then it's like not till like February next year maybe. And so I decided to pull the trigger. It's also super cheap. It's only like $15.
Yeah,
which is,
there's so much game here.
Yeah, and I think
it's like half of
there was a sale on it or something as well.
I got it for like 10-ish.
Yeah, I was gonna say like $10, and I was like, yeah, fine, I'll get it.
Yeah, it's even in the Steam sales, it's been on sale for cheap. I think it was a Kickstarter thing, so I think that might be why the prices, like they had what they needed to make it, and so they're just like what they get out of it is profit at this point.
Gravy.
But still, I still think like this game could be like a $30 game probably.
It's something special. I really feel that if you like those kind of games, that you have to check it out. Just know that it's a long game and it's really sprawling, so if you'll get tired of it.
Both thematically and in terms of the world design, it does a lot of things that I've never really seen in this type of game before.
I feel like it's the first essential kind of Metroidvania game since maybe some of the best DS Castlevanias.
Yeah, Aria of Sorrow or whatever.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Dawn of Sorrow.
Dawn of Sorrow.
Discussion for another time. I think
That's
Kurt raises point that we should probably move on to
our number 6 game.
A game that
or number 7 game.
Number 7 game, sorry. Gorogoa, which we could try and tell you what this game is. It doesn't make any sense. You have to
it's a Dream Logic
stream
visual puzzle game.
Yeah.
So I'll note I voted for this as my number 1 game, and I'm sure that will be considered heresy.
No, I totally see it.
Considering other things. But I will say
it's 45 minutes to an hour, and it is immaculate.
Yep, and I bought it.
I don't know why you say that, Eric, because I'm sure it took me 3 or 4 hours to finish this game.
I played it on PC because I saw it when it was demoed many years ago, and I was like,
the guy's been working on it.
I'm totally in.
Years.
He had like a little like section that you could demo, and I was like, I'm totally. Whenever this fucking comes out,
was that at the PAX? I think this was like one of the PAXs that we went to.
I think it was
in 2011. That's how
something
long
like that
this has been in development for.
Yeah.
Can we talk for a second about platform? Because I think Mike, you said you played it on your phone.
Yeah,
so hold
I played on iOS.
Okay, all right.
So I was gonna say I bought it on PC. I played through it there.
Yep.
Then they put it out on Switch, and I was like, okay, I'll buy it there, because I wanted to give this guy some more money because this was so great. And I played it through to completion there too. And as I noted at the beginning of this, I had a whole bunch of stuff on my list with like, this game was super great, except caveat. And I didn't have any caveats for this one.
That's kind of how
so it's like,
I'm super into what I'm seeing.
That's kind of how Danganronpa 3 ended up so high on my list, because it was like the least flawed of a bunch of games that I loved. But
and as the resident sort of guy that likes puzzle games probably the most out of the four of us that
the voting
started
party.
the voting for. I felt like I needed to represent it, and it's the animation is great, the atmosphere is great.
Blown, Anthony?
What'd you say?
I said, are you ready to have your mind blown?
Yeah.
Okay, just keep watching.
Yeah, wait for it. Yeah, and so it's a visual puzzle that's incredibly clever, and I've not seen anything that works like this. It's unique. And the puzzles just keep sort of unfolding in interesting ways that just were really clever.
Yeah, for how awesome it is when it's like a sliding block puzzle where the perspective changes constantly.
Yep.
And you have to match.
Yep.
The
I know.
And that isn't even the most elaborate.
It gets
of that kind
way
of thing.
way
what
more
you just
intense
saw
now.
ain't nothing.
Yeah, but that was
wow.
something.
Yeah, right.
If that intrigued you, just buy it.
Get on this game.
I'm gonna
It's
stop.
like
That's why I asked about platform.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on everything. I felt like a mouse would probably be the best way to do it. Also, the art's really good, so you might want it on a big screen. But
that was the one drag
total
about playing it on the
fine.
phone.
Yeah,
It works on the phone, but it definitely you get the feeling like I can. I wish I had a bigger screen.
Yeah, I think it worked nicely on the Switch.
If you have an iPad, that'd probably be the best place to play it.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
So I compared it to, there were these books that came out that I read a lot when I was a kid. Like one was called The 11th Hour. Which was like these weird puzzle books. Yeah, I think Mike and I had a conversation.
We've talked about that one a bunch of times.
Came out, but it's like a weird puzzle book where there's like lots of it's a short kids story book, but it has like all these like codes and puzzles and stuff hidden into the artwork, and that's what this game reminds me of. There's clues to everything that you're trying to do in the game, sort of hidden in the art itself.
Yeah, and you just have to sort of look for it.
Yeah, it definitely makes you feel like a conspiracy theorist, like trying to comb through something to find something. And there's like a story that is really easy to kind of not pay attention to initially because you're trying to solve the puzzles.
Focusing on the puzzles. Yeah.
Right, but the art and everything that you see is sort of connected in a way that's really clever. It's a really, like I said, I think it's a game that took 7 years to make and only takes about an hour.
Because it's one guy.
Right, and it only took me like an hour to finish, but I think that like you can see the amount of time that it would take to assemble like these puzzles and to put all this art together that would intersect in all these really
No, I'm
essentially the guy that did it was like, I want to make a game. I don't know how.
Yep.
I'm gonna go figure that out. And how do I do all this stuff? Then so I was getting I signed up after the demo to get updates because I wanted to know as soon as it was out. And every once in a while he'd pop up a thing. It's like, I completely threw away this whole section because I realized it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, and I just needed to start over.
Yeah, I think he said that he threw away about a quarter of the puzzles because they didn't.
Oh wow!
Well, because they didn't connect to the story in the way that he was really happy with. So
or get to chapter 3 and realize, I should have been doing it this.
It takes something fucking special for someone to self-edit in that way, to spend that much time coding that stuff and then to throw it out because it doesn't fit with your overall vision, I think, and it really shows.
Yeah,
it really
totally
shows. This is really something. Like I said,
well, I'm strongly considering buying it on my Switch before I go to sleep.
I think it's $15. It's crazy.
It's something like that.
Yeah, or $10 maybe.
It's like $5 on iOS.
Yeah, it's even cheaper on iOS. It's really good.
What is the name of it again?
Gorgonzola.
Like that guy.
Gorgonzola. Okay.
Goro, like the final boss from Mortal Kombat.
Okay. Is he in this game?
And then Go, like
no
that
spoilers.
movie that came out in the late 90s. And then the letter
That's
A.
the story.
Does he have a double jump?
That guy, and go a place.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the game. This is the story of how Goro was born, and in a bowl of fruit or whatever.
Yep.
Right.
And then
he collected a bunch of fruit.
Few more things happened, and then you got 4 arms. And you're a strong man.
Mm-hmm. That's actually the final cutscene. Leads
about right.
The original Mortal Kombat.
With us on the line is the developer of Gorogoa, Alex. Here to tell us what the real story of the game is.
Our number 6 game, as voted by both Mr. Mike Ailes and Kurt Adam, is XCOM 2: War of the Chosen
and
expansion.
If you look very carefully, Kurt is actually also in the game right now.
He's a samurai, like he is in real life.
Am I murdered in this cutscene? Is that what's going to happen?
Do you want to say anything, Kurt, before I just kind of gush?
I'll just say that
This is what this game
I
looks like.
don't play XCOM like Mike does. Like, I really like XCOM a lot, but Mike, like, the way, like, Joe talks about playing Mario games where he's like, I gotta crack it open, I gotta suck all the marrow out, and I gotta do that. Like, that's the way Mike plays his games. Like, he plays on hardcore, and he plays Iron Man and all this stuff. I don't do any of that shit.
So I
save scum the fuck out of it. I play one time, and I have a great time, and I'm totally fine if other people want to play that way. This is the way I like to play it. And I played all of XCOM 2 when before I had finished XCOM 2 before this came out. And then the stuff that I was seeing about the expansion, I was like,
"Yeah, you shot that guy right in the
nuts." There I am. Nice. That's about right. Hair trigger, that's me. And so I played it. Essentially, you play through an entire campaign again, which I would normally never do, and I did, and I thought it was great. I liked all the things that the Chosen stuff brought in to change the game up.
Yeah, so
and just add more things you had to juggle and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
so the War of the Chosen is just new stuff for the existing campaign. Correct?
Yeah, it essentially bolts on a whole bunch of new stuff. It's a lot of new stuff.
Yeah.
It adds, so the Chosen are 3 alien
special bosses.
Yeah. But they're more than that. They're like the Nemesis from Resident Evil Nemesis, where like,
or they're like the orcs from Shadow of Mordor. Like they're these enemies that you come back and fight over and over and over again, and they develop over the course of the game, and you can't kill them through traditional means, and they've got strengths and weaknesses, and those actually can vary from one playthrough to another.
Yeah, and you will be playing through a mission and like get like halfway through the mission, and all of a sudden one of them will warp in, and suddenly you have to deal with that.
And then
shit
your day
too.
is wrecked.
And your day is wrecked because you're sort of carefully working your way and taking apart the level, and all of a sudden, like, the fucking sniper shows up and just starts wrecking your shit.
Man, sniper's the least of your worries.
It's like reinforcements in Fire Emblem, but like worse.
Yeah, exactly. So it adds all that stuff, and it adds a whole bunch of other pieces that just give you more plates to spin. Which
it adds Devil Dog Anthony Rogers.
It does add Devil Dog Anthony Rogers. So yeah, so that's
Shoot that robot, Anthony.
My highest recommendation is a game that I didn't think I would necessarily play, and again anytime soon. I played all the way through again.
Yeah. So and I like that you brought that up as perspective, because XCOM is my forever game.
Right.
And XCOM 2 with War of the Chosen more than ever, to the point where, I mean, I'm not a guy who has that much free time. I have spent at least 100 hours playing XCOM this year.
Guy was just complaining that other game you liked is 20 hours long.
He's got to play more XCOM.
Because it's taken away from XCOM.
I have a lot of XCOM to play, Anthony. You don't understand. And like, I finished a campaign of this on was it Commander, Iron Man, whatever the second hardest difficulty is, and then like a couple of days later I started another one up because I was just like, well, I'm not going to stop playing XCOM, right? They're just gonna so at this point, speaking of how much I like roguelikes, I've treated XCOM as a roguelike for a while now, but I feel like with War of the Chosen it really brings that to a new level, because now you have this kind of the combination of the random chosen enemies. You don't know which ones you're going to get at which point in your campaign, and their abilities are different. And they've also rolled in a whole bunch of, like, they've been both more random and more deterministic at the same time, which is kind of really cool. Like, one of the favorite things about this version of the game is that you have the covert operations that you can send your guys out on, like in Final Fantasy Tactics, where you choose a couple of soldiers and you send them off
that
to
is
do
so
something
good.
This job
off
is
camera.
A success.
Well, the good news is the job is always a success, more or less. But it lets you.
Well, it's a success, but this guy got captured, so sorry.
Yeah, I don't take those jobs.
Or you take the perk that says nobody gets captured.
Yeah, every time I can. But what's really cool about that is that it gives you a lot of leeway as to how you want to like develop your base and your squad, and like if there's anything that you're missing, it gives you an avenue to go and get it. So the game is harder because the Chosen are real sons of bitches, and again, they show up and they make your life real hard, especially before you know how to deal with them. But at the same time, you have more control. But then there are still random elements, like the whole the way the map is, all the different all the different bonuses that you can get from either controlling a continent or from making friends with the new factions. And there's more than those than there had been before. And like now there's like research breakthroughs that pop up randomly while you're researching stuff. And there's the proving ground system for like developing, grenades and armor systems that where it's like a gacha machine.
It gives you a whole bunch of things where like, especially for somebody like Mike that might play it a lot, they'll be like, okay, so normally you would go through and sort of make, one of these couple of paths through the tech tree or whatever.
Original XCOM was like, you want one sniper and you want one support
guy, and they're like, but hold on.
Hold on. Now everyone gets random abilities drawn from a pool of other abilities, and you can spend points to...
And you get some extra points, and you can spend them on those instead if you want.
Right. Yeah, so...
Oh, and also, hold on, that research that you wanted to do... Well, if you do this other one, you can do it twice as fast.
Yeah,
but only now. You have to do it right now.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, fuck. Okay, so if I do that now, then that means I've got to... Okay, so then I can send these guys... All right, but I'm going to send those 2 guys off onto this mission, but that means I can't use them for this other mission, like on the real map. Okay, so I got to make sure and I got to promote that guy over the... Yeah.
So the game is just honed to like a precise edge, especially the tactical gameplay part, which is what you're seeing now. And the strategic layer offers tons and tons of options. It doesn't fix every problem I have with XCOM 2. Like, I still think that the map screen is just like a giant mess. And I really wish that they had something as gripping and like as easy to understand as the first game's like Rising Panic levels across the world. But I mean, everything that's good about this game is so good. And like, I'm going to finish my second campaign on Iron Man in a little while, and it's going to take some doing to not just fire up another one shortly after. Because I just enjoy it so much.
That guy's gonna be in trouble.
You know what? That guy doesn't exist. He's a phantom that my Templar created. He's expendable.
I just started playing this, and it's actually I didn't finish XCOM 2 because I had a great game-breaking bug where it just sort of turned the enemy AI off, and so I just could play the missions.
That sounds like a game-winning bug to me.
I mean, yeah, it made it really easy, but also not quite as much fun, unfortunately. But it's actually kind of intimidating, the number of different like builds you can have for all your different characters. And
there's a lot to know.
Just the amount of stuff that you can choose to do. It feels, if this game, like the original XCOM reboot, was like a very simplified version of what those old strategy games felt like, and this game feels overwhelming in the way that those old games did.
Yeah, I mean, it adds like 3 new...
It's still easier to interface with than a lot of those
soldier types and all that stuff, and then you're like, well, do I develop those guys, or do I do this? Or...
You do, because they're amazing.
Yeah, because
the Templars are so good.
Yeah, and also this fixes, I think, a lot of the bugs and technical problems that the original XCOM 2 had, so that's also a plus, because that game might have been really good, but I feel like a lot of people skipped it.
There was
how bad it was technically.
There were a lot of buggies, and this game, just even original XCOM 2, fixes one of the big problems that you had said you always talked about with the first XCOM, which was, it sort of wants you to the optimal way to play it is to turtle up and be really careful and slowly move around, and you can win really easily like that, but that's not very interesting. And this game like fucks with that to force you to go faster.
There's time pressure objectives. And
there's time pressure objectives. Yep, exactly. All that stuff sort of helps to mix that up.
Yep.
I love it so much. I can't wait to see what they do with the series next. Like, it's probably gonna be 4 years before we see XCOM 3, but I'm 100% on board.
It seems good so far. I'm really enjoying.
You want some pointers? So, I know a fucking lot about XCOM now.
All right, I will have some questions at some point, probably. Maybe I should stream it and have you co-pilot. And
I would be very happy to do that. I'm watching 2 different
that'd be super interesting
streams of people playing XCOM. Anyway, let's move on to the game that I liked almost as much as XCOM.
My number 1 game of the year, the game I played the most, the game I had the most fun playing, the game that is also the most like 2017 vintage. If that
I'm
makes
here
any
for the
sense.
snow. I'm here for the snow because I really want to
So
I really want to see this video clip.
Our number 5 our number 5 game of the year is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which I played like 150 or 200 hours of this year.
I'm really shocked this wasn't higher on the list.
It came out in early access.
This wasn't higher on the list for at least one reason.
Joe never
I didn't vote for it at all.
Kurt didn't vote for it, so
because I knew it would be like number 1 on Eric's list, and that was good enough to get it onto the list.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I didn't. I mean, I really liked the amount of when I did play it, I really liked it. I just didn't play it nearly as much as a lot of other things.
Anybody that's interested in video games in 2017 is familiar
I think it's
with this game, or has probably played it. Like this game captured the zeitgeist in the same way that Overwatch did last year. In fact, like to the point where if you're not interested, it's like probably annoying and
everybody makes fun of you.
Right.
It's a little annoying, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
I thought it was a little. Here's the thing. I'm going to give the outsider-insider perspective, which is I thought it was a little annoying, and then one day I was a little tipsy, and you guys were like, just buy it. And I was like, fuck it, all right. And then I did.
And it's fun,
It's hilarious.
Holy shit, this game's tight.
Yeah, Joe, you haven't played it at all, have you?
I haven't played it all, no.
I was going to make him play it when we did Extra Life, but we didn't. I forgot. We kind of ran out of time.
As somebody that's not that great at like playing PC first-person shooters, because I've never gotten really good at the mouse and keyboard controls, and I like to sit on my couch and play video games.
Also, this is a game that has very technical shooting, so you have to take into account bullet drop and stuff like that. It's really,
right. So all of that basically mitigates against me being very good at this, and yet I still have fun playing it.
Yeah, being good
is funny. Like I feel the exact same way. It is. There's so many things in this game that are totally not my jam.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It is almost definitely. I haven't actually made a ranking list for myself, but it's probably, if not one, then number 2.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's fucking stupid.
I put it just below XCOM. It's really good.
It has PUBG has, if you're not familiar with the history, it has roots in like Arma mods, and Arma is like a really highly technical first-person shooter. Like I said, what has like incorporates wind velocity and bullet drop, and you can only take a couple of hits and you die, and there's no respawn.
I'm really excited to see what's about to happen here.
Shit gets pretty wild. I'm gonna have to skip ahead to get to the really good part, but. So what this does is it takes some of that technical shooting stuff and then it puts it in a giant open space where you can just kind of do whatever the fuck you want. And so playing it kind of feels like an evolution or a marriage between those games and the Battlefield series, where So where Battlefield is really chaotic, and it's also like the player counts in Battlefield are like 32 versus 32.
Right, just ridiculous,
But there's like vehicles and helicopters and planes and wild shit happens all the time, and it's super fun. This game is like a battle royale style, so it's like it's like there's 100 people get dropped on this island, and you start with no loot, and you have to find guns, and then you have to be the last man standing. Or there's like a squad mode and a duo mode. Squads is up to 4 people, duo is 2 people, obviously, and so like each one of those modes feels very different, like the tactics involved and the strategy and where you land and where you try and get loot, and then how you approach the circle, and like whether or not just the simple. This is a game that makes you think a lot about the simple act of pulling the trigger on your gun.
Yeah,
because you never. When you shoot your gun, you give away your position. So you need to make sure that you can engage with an enemy, take them out, and then
move on. And there's all of this.
And so it leads to these really, when you get towards the end game, it is incredibly tense. Like nothing I've played this year was as a tense a situation as the very first time that I won a game or the first time that I got into the end game.
I will say probably one of the most rewarding sessions I had of this was that we were playing. It was you and me and Coffee
and a rando.
Yeah, there was a rando. I can't remember who the third person that we knew was. Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. And some rando, and he joined up with us, and it ended up being the rando and some other guy were the last 2 people standing.
Yep.
And they were just circling around this tiny little shed
in the middle of
just trying to figure out how to get the drop on the other guy.
Yeah.
And while we just sat there and watched, because we were like, oh my god.
Yeah. It's really incredible. Like, I feel like even games that I love, like Overwatch, like it's kind of a blur of things that, like, I know how that game, like I've played so much of that game that I've internalized the mechanics, and I just know how it works, and I know what Overwatch is, but it's hard for me to cite specific instances of things that I did in Overwatch that are cool. And I've won like 20 something games at this point, and I could probably describe almost all of them, at least in some detail. And then there's all kinds of other weird shit that,
because they're all totally unique,
right? Because and like, but not only that, but it's like if video games are inherently about telling stories, like this is the game this year that gave me the most space in which to create that story for myself.
Well, just like watching what you guys are doing in this video, which is incredible.
You can just get some motorcycles and dick around and have a great time.
But I realized the thing that drew me to this was that it had nothing to, I mean, there is like that intensity is awesome to kind of experience with everybody, but this game promoted us just playing with each other.
Yeah.
Like it's like a grown-up toy. Yeah. It's like, we're just like, fuck, like, let's see what this thing does, or let's go like over there. This part
and the pace of it is slower.
I haven't since like Grand Theft Auto the first time.
Yeah.
Here's all these weird tools, and then you can just kind of go and fuck around and do what you want with them. And it also like a game of this to go from when you drop out of the plane to the very end game takes like close to a half an hour. And so like you can swing hard from one of those positions to the other.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, I think both of the matches I've won
being really, really tense, and it's really, really great.
I think almost all the matches I've won playing with you guys, it's been we go to some random spot on the map to see what's there and fuck around, and then we find a vehicle and we decide to go for it, and meanwhile the herd is thinned out so much because everybody's been fighting while we're like dicking around in the corner of the map.
Yeah, it can also be fun to go to a high population area and try and get a gun real fast, and just
I'm getting really excited for what's coming up next.
I'm excited that you're excited.
It's funny because for as ridiculous as the idea behind this game is, like 100 strangers parachute onto an island and have to kill each other, it feels so plausible when you're doing it, and everything you do in the game feels like, like if we were actually in this situation, you know.
You can see me like looting here. Also, like the loot cycle in this game feels really good.
That's what I want to say.
It's pretty limited. Yeah. Well, go ahead, Alex. You can.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's just, it is limited. It's just, there's a fun aspect of it where, so I think playing this game solo, like I do not enjoy it at all. I've played like
I agree.
Games solo, and it's like, it's just not.
It's not for me.
Not for me. Yeah, and so, but it's like, but playing it with you guys, it's just like, hey, me and my buddies are hanging out, and we're sorry, I'm getting just,
it's coffee, like very loose grip on that gun.
Yeah,
that's not safe. You know what you're doing there, Coffee, is not safe.
Damn, that was good.
I want to see like the Wile E. Coyote, ring of smoke as he hits the ground.
But just hanging out with your buddies and walking around and being like, hey, I found like a silencer. Do you need that? And it's like, no. Like, oh, but I got a foregrip. Do you need that? It's like, oh yeah. And you're kind of comparing things, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, a dude's here with a shotgun, and we're like, fuck, Coffee's dead.
Shit, where is he?
Yeah. And then there was like a frantic. There was a game I actually, and like it gets really like, I don't want to say emotional, but like
it does.
Like it kind of does, because there was a game we played, and like. We were like there was basically, I remember, Eric, you were the last, it was you and two other guys, and you ended up dying, and it was like those other two guys. But the guy who won, like, he killed Coffee, and Coffee told me where he was, but I fucked up and like mixed up the numbers on the compass and like looked to the left when I should have looked to the right. I could have killed him, and then it like you could have killed that. You were in a good position to kill the other guy when it was just the three of you left. So like we could have won that game if I hadn't fucked up, and I felt like bad. I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought about it, like, because that was the last game we played that night, and I had to go to bed because I had to work the next day. And so, like, I'm sitting in bed, and I'm just like, fuck, man, I fucking let everybody down. Like, you guys didn't care or even know.
It's like being a war movie with Alex, your war buddies sometimes.
The opposite is like one of the last times we played, some dude downed Mike, and I killed him and his like partner and saved Mike, and Mike was so impressed that I didn't just like die because I've been so bad for so long at this game.
Right.
I felt like a fucking hero.
That's true, because we played the last time I played, we haven't played in a while, but like Eric was like downed and didn't know where the guys were, and like I killed 2 of them, and I was like, I felt so like I went in and like revived him and threw down a med pack, and I'm like, oh man.
Because it's not like, it's not insignificant to actually kill someone in this game.
This is a game where if I get 2 kills in a single match, I feel like a god.
Yep. Most of the games I've won, I've had no kills and fired maybe like 2 bullets total. Yeah. Like, not even kidding.
My first chicken dinner was on the original map, and I got the last kill on that map. It was my only kill. And I was just vibrating for like 15 minutes after that. It's like, I need to go to sleep. I can't go to sleep. Oh my God, I can't go to sleep. That was amazing.
Yeah, there's something really special about this. But I will say that like I said when I introduced it, there's like a vintage to it that like so the people that are making it are sort of torn between like it being a thing for people that are really hardcore about it and people that are like want to have a more casual relationship with it, and they also are having a real hard time because
they're trying to turn it into
there's
e-sport.
Like it's been infiltrated by cheaters in a way that I've like that's a thing that's common in video games, online shooters and stuff, especially on PC, but I've never seen it to the extent that it is in this game, to the point where like sometimes somebody will just have a good shot, but it's like it's indistinguishable from cheating because the cheating happens so often. Like there's just
the problem is there's 100 people in a match, and if there's one cheater, then that runs the risk of taking out like 20 people
and ruins it for everybody. And but like I said, also like sometimes somebody's just like taking pot shots and gets lucky and hits you in the head. But it's like is that guy using an aimbot or somebody will have their AK on auto and the recoil will just happen to hit you 3 times, but then you'll watch the kill cam and you'll be like, oh, actually that guy, because most of the time it wouldn't hit you, it feels like he's cheating because it feels like he has a no recoil macro installed in his mouse or whatever.
And that's shitty, and that's the slight other edge of that sword is that for some people using like aim bots, they still have to like aim at you.
Right.
Like there have been cheaters that like fire through walls and stuff.
Yeah, we've run into people that run like hyenas that run faster than like cheetahs. Like
right.
Like run faster than vehicles and stuff like
that. But there are some where they're just using like aim assists.
Yeah.
And the thing about this game is like oftentimes you just totally get the drop on someone and they're dead before they can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that doesn't always help them.
Right. It's true.
Like, I've seen dudes that have killed Coffee and then we've shot him in the back because that guy he immediately like got a headshot on Coffee, but his back was to 2 of us
because he didn't understand the power of friendship.
Yeah.
Right, so exactly. That's what I meant.
Also, like they also have a problem.
I knew anime was true.
With
Jesus,
like this game is hugely popular in China, and people, there's so much like horrible racism that goes on with criticizing those players.
You mean it's a thing on the internet?
Right.
Yeah, that's what
but it is also.
Can I just bring something up?
That it kind of sucks to play with people that are on the other side of the world, not because they're Chinese, but just because of the server lag that it introduces.
Right.
And it just like makes it hard to. Like I said, it introduces all these things that makes the actual playing part of it come into question in a way that is really annoying. And it's just like, it's obvious that this was a game that they expected like people to play. It's good and it's great, and I had a great time with it, but they were not ready for 30 million people to play.
This level of popularity.
And so like I'm hopeful that it'll get better, but like the state that it's in right now, it's kind of difficult to recommend to people. So like I said, like
I don't know, man, I'm watching this and I really want to play it.
This was just like a weird indie game that Coffee and I played like 100 hours of. Like there was a point were like a 2-month period where he and I were just playing it every night for a couple hours. And we were just like dicking around and learning all the locations and picking up strategies and things. And
it was so fun. It was so fun when that second map rolled out.
I just have one complaint.
Go ahead, Coffee.
I got most of you guys your first fucking chicken dinner. Entire segment doing nothing but saying how I died in the
well, because those are the most emotionally touching moments is when we lose you.
Because it's so
you're like our father. You're our father figure.
It's writ large.
Make no mistake. Whenever I play this game and it's not with Eric, Eric and Coffee, like I do not do well at all. You guys are like, what do you think we should do, Alex? I'm like, why are you asking me?
Right.
Well, we ask you where you want to go, so you can explore the map. That's all.
Yeah, but I know at this point that you guys know better than I do. So I'm like, I'll know where, because you guys all have all the good strats.
Eric put it best where me and him
pretty consistently get to the end. So I'm like, I defer to you guys always. Like,
Eric put it best a while ago where me and him are like the parents to you kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true. It's totally true.
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably...
I do feel like I'm playing with my dad.
We should probably move on, but... But yeah, Coffee's definitely better at shooting guys than I am, but I feel like I'm a little better at like playing the field and observing the...
He's better at shooting guys and claiming everyone's cheating. And you're better at herding me around and making me feel like I'm contributing even though I'm not.
This thing that happened, this was Coffee's idea, so he's the best at PUBG.
There's also that. Yeah.
Coffee is the best.
We had a great time playing this year, for sure.
I will say it would have been higher on my list if it hadn't been for all those matches where we went for 20 minutes without seeing anyone, and then I instantly died to a headshot from some person. It was like 3 kilometers away.
PUBG.
Yep, that's PUBG.
All right. Well, it's not PUBG.
Resident Evil 7, number 4. Resident Evil 7:
I'm surprised this game plays so high.
I forgot this game existed.
I really want to play it still.
You shouldn't forget this game existed.
Joe rated it real high, and so did I. So.
Yeah. So this was my number 2 game of this year.
I want to play this.
This game
was my 4. Yeah, number 4.
So I think that. Well, actually, my top 2 games.
After shaking Jack off is all I read in that text.
Yeah,
that's all you need to read.
I think it was like 7 on mine or something. It's really good.
I think that this really shines a light on the way that anybody who's listened to me talk about video games before knows this about me. But if you're new here, I really appreciate tightly designed. Like the complaints about this game were like, oh, it's so scripted, and it's like, well, yeah, it's a Resident Evil game, and it's also like it being so scripted, quote unquote, also means that it is designed to a letter.
There's very little downtime, and the downtime is spent exploring a space that is just really incredibly well put together.
This whole game looks like it's made out of plastic.
As opposed to like most other video games.
I see what you mean. I understand what you're getting at, where there's like a weird sheen to stuff.
Yes,
it's supposed to feel like
that's also because
like sticky and wet and like.
No, it also looks sticky and wet for sure.
It kind of has that crystal coating that old Unreal games used to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
But coming right from PUBG, where everything is like 2 polygons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be doing it too.
Anyway, you were saying
this is a meticulously constructed game, and that's really the kind of like my favorite games are, Contra and these games where it's like everything is like meticulously designed, which is why I like the Resident Evil games, because all the environments always feel in good Resident Evil games, not Resident Evil 6. Everything feels like it's this like part of a whole, and it's really meticulously designed. And this game sort of lags at the end when you get to the ship. Towards the end,
the mine specifically for me.
So my caveat was for this game was the mines.
So the mines I didn't mind
really
as
fucking
much.
Great until then, and I'm like, meh.
The ship I disliked more than the mines.
I can totally see that.
There were parts of the ship that were okay, but
but I also there was no
that's garage.
This game I played through 4 or 5 times. I finished this game twice on the hardest difficulty, which was also something that I really appreciated, because the hardest difficulty in this game is called Madhouse, and what it does is it goes back to a lot of the things about the old Resident Evil games. So it's not ink ribbons, but they're cassette tapes, but you have a limited number of things that you can use to save your game. And if you run out,
he's not around long.
Yeah, this is also, I love this because like this is not how shovels or human heads work. But,
right,
like,
exactly.
It doesn't matter. It's a horror game.
But it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's Resident Evil.
It works that way if you're very strong, like this guy.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you knock the person over before you would actually like cleave their skull in two?
Well, it turns out he has a really good stance.
Yeah, right.
So what I really like about this game, I like we were talking like the back half of it isn't so great because it sort of becomes generic Resident Evil stuff at the end.
But the second half of a horror game isn't good. What?
This space that you're in, this house,
the house and the
surrounding
grounds,
it, and the ground surrounding
all
it.
of that.
For the first 2/3 of it.
It borrows a lot from a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is one of my favorite horror. It's one of the best horror movies ever made. It's hilarious and weird and also like unsettling and scary and has an incredible jump scare. And it gives you this family, this guy here, Jack, will pursue you throughout the house and the grounds on the first part of the game. And he is relentless and he's an asshole and he's also kind of unkillable, but so are you. So it's like he's not really trying to kill you. He's just doing it because he's bored. Like he's just a bored asshole who's trying to get in your way. And
who can take a few shots to the face.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He can take more than that.
More than a few. Yeah.
You're unkillable in this game?
Well, you're not unkillable.
You're definitely not unkillable.
You're not unkillable, but you're anybody who's infected with the thing.
The G virus equivalent in this game has like regenerative powers, basically.
So there's a moment there is an optional moment where you can get your leg cut off by Jack.
Yeah.
And then you just like stick it back on the stump and pour like healing fluid on it and it reattaches.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it only happens if you like encounter him in a specific spot in a specific part of the game. He'll like cut off your leg and then he throws it back at you and then you like use this part is great where you fight him with the chainsaw.
I'm going to skip back.
Do you grab the chainsaw, Eric?
Well, you'll find out. I reeled it back just a little bit.
Okay. So it borrows very heavily from Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and which are two of my favorite horror films as well.
Yeah.
And even Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, like but like there's a dinner scene that's kind of infamous because it's very early in the game. It also has a weird difficulty curve where like the first boss encounter is like one of the hardest ones. Like there's a stream in the backlog of me on the hard difficulty playing the first boss battle against Mania for like an hour, and I can't get past her. She just keeps killing me over and over and over again.
Speaking of unkillable.
Yeah. But it really, after Resident Evil 6, man, I was like, I have been a Resident Evil the first PlayStation game I ever bought was the first Resident Evil. I've played through almost every game in the series. And Resident Evil 6 really was like a gut punch for me. Like I was just like, this is so bad. That game makes
hilarious though.
It's awful though. Like
it's super bad.
It's one of the only games in the series I've never finished, and it's the only one in the main line, like that and Resident Evil 0, and 6 is like way worse than 0. And and I was like, I don't know what they're gonna do with 7. And when they were like, there was so much talk about like they totally changed course. It's so different from all this, and to finally play 7, and it was in first person, and I'm like, is this gonna work? And it's just like it. For me, it worked on every level. Like I said, I played through it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I played all the DLC. There's actually some really great DLC. There's one where you're like locked in a bedroom by the matriarch of the creepy family, and you have to like, it's all puzzle solving. There's no combat whatsoever.
There's some great aesthetic stuff where you play through like previous people that have been in the house via an old VHS tape that tells like short stories that sort of fleshes out the characters and the story behind the space a little bit.
Situation, exactly.
Also, one other thing I really wanted to note was that this game, more so than maybe any other first-person game I've ever played, makes it feel like you have a body. Like the way your arms flail around and stuff when you get hit, and just the way you move, like it doesn't feel like you're a floating camera with a gun. It feels like there's like a fleshy sack attached to it. It doesn't. Sometimes it's kind of annoying to have to deal with that, just like it is in real life. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating just to navigate some spaces. But once you get a hold on how it all works, it feels really good, and it makes it feel impactful when you die. Like it makes it feel like you have more stakes than you usually do in a first person game, which is why the horror aspect of it works. But I mean, really, like the reason it made my list is just because the space, like you said, Joe, is just such an incredibly well put together.
And I didn't play it in VR, but everybody I know who did said it's like an incredible experience to play in VR.
I'm not somebody that has played much of the Resident Evil stuff. Like I played Resident Evil 5 with Coffee, and I played some of Resident Evil 1. But
you didn't play 4?
Yeah, man.
I have 4, but I haven't played it.
What?
You gotta play 4.
You play Resident Evil 4, it's pretty good.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
It's like 5, but it's not as fun because it doesn't have co-op.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
It's more fun than 5.
But anyway,
I agree with all of those opinions.
I heard so many good things about how creepy and how scary this was. Atmospherically and everything. I was like, okay, I'll try this.
That weapon he's got is.
It's also not bogged down in lore from like early Resident Evil.
That was the other
games,
thing.
right?
Yeah,
so
I was like, well, it's rebooted. You don't have to know all that crap.
It's not until you get to the end.
Yeah.
Even then, you don't really have to know any. Like the last scene, there's like a guy from an earlier game shows up,
it's just
and
like
he's
as
like,
soon
"Hey,
as
I'm
they
this guy."
bring all of that stuff into it, I was immediately kind of checked out and disappointed.
Yeah,
but
this is also the only game I've gotten a platinum trophy in since Resident Evil 5, actually. So
it's just like more that this game just didn't need that stuff.
Yeah, that's
like that
I
stuff
agree.
is inferior to pretty much everything else that happens in this. But man, this chainsaw fight's so good.
Yeah, I can't believe that weapon.
It's really stupid, but it's like this game
his
is scary,
chainsaw
but it
scissors
also
are
has
great.
a really good sense of humor about all the dumb shit that it knows that it's a dumb video game and acts accordingly for the most part.
Yep.
Yeah, it has a very Toby Hooper, like later Toby Hooper
Texas
feel.
Chainsaw Massacre 2,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, he's even saying fun, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like they knew that. It's a deliberate homage for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't. Is there anything else you need to?
Nah, we've played it on streams and stuff. It's just, anybody who has even a passing interest in horror games should play it.
Absolutely. All right.
I'll get on it.
So our number 3 game is a game that I've been waiting for a very long time, basically since I was 5 years old. This is what I wanted video games to look like. And then the game 30 years later finally came out, and it's fucking fantastic.
When you were 5 years old, were you Cuphead or Mugman?
My number 2 game of the year. This also this game ended up at number 2 because A, it is great, and B, because it is like, along with Danganronpa 3, like the least flawed game that I played this year.
I put this game on my list. This game
ready to look at.
This game could have been higher, but I deliberately set it lower on my list because I felt like it was weird to rank a game super high that I only played like one day.
We played a few hours of
I actually didn't rate it any higher for exactly that reason. I was like, I need to play more of this, and I haven't. But I know it's really good, and I know how much Eric likes it, and he's got, relatively good taste.
Kurt, look at it.
I know.
Do I need to say anything? I mean, it plays really good. It's a really, really strong platform.
It's a treasure game.
Yeah, it's inspired a lot by Gunstar Heroes and Contra.
It's very much like Alien Soldier, which I actually did play some Alien Soldier this week, and just to remind myself how much this game is like Alien Soldier.
For my money, if you're gonna make a list of the 3 best sort of run and gun platform games, it's Contra, it's Gunstar Heroes, and it's this. I think that it has a really cool weapon system where you can rotate weapons in and out, and you can unlock a bunch of different ones and sort of pick the one that fits your play style and the boss that you're fighting the most. There's a bunch of different.
You can jump on stuff.
What's that?
I didn't know you could shoot those blue shots up.
Oh yeah, you can.
It depends on what your weapon is, your base weapon, right?
I finished this game.
Yeah, the base weapons all have different. So as you shoot guys and as you parry those pink things, which is a parry, you jump and die, or you jump, double jump, and then the second jump will like give you a bunch of power up, and then you can use that power up to either do a small special or you can do a big special. And there's a bunch of different those. You can like sort of customize your character as you choose.
Man, look at you, Mr. A+.
It plays good. Like
it plays really, really well. It looks amazing. Soundtrack is great. Like it's just super cohesive, and
for a game that looks the way this does, you would think that a lot of the hitboxes would feel a lot of like weird and inaccurate. But for the most part, it's like when you feel like you should be hitting things, you're hitting them. I think it's actually more that it's just really generous about it.
I'm really impressed because this game I was looking forward to it for so long.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way this is going to be like, it looked like it looked like a fun indie game that I'd like pick up and that'd be that. And then it just kept getting delayed.
And I was like, come on. Talk about because of the aesthetic and that's all.
Yeah. Right. And that's not what the response has been at all.
No. And I remember people saying that, when it was being previewed, like, it's going to be bad. And I was like, that seems so weird that it looks like it couldn't be bad. And I mean, I've made those mistakes before, right? But
right.
When I finally played it, it's just like, I feel like this is the kind of game, sometimes you play a game and you're like, I feel like this game was made with me in mind, and it's like, this is the kind of like this style of cartoon when I was young, and a lot of the stuff was on cable and like the early days of Cartoon Network, and there was the Tex Avery show, and I know a lot of this stuff is specifically like inspired by Works and Max Fleischer, but just the 30s and 40s style stuff. Yeah. And I love those style of cartoons, and I mean run and gun. I mean Contra is my favorite video game of all time, so obviously like this style of gameplay really speaks to me this game totally delivered from what I played of it, and I can't wait to have a computer that will let me play all of it. Essentially,
that's good. There's a ton of. It took me like 13 hours, I think, to beat it or something like that. There's
so many bosses
and a bunch of run and gun levels, and there's a bunch of levels where you play as an airplane, and it becomes kind of like a little bit of a bullet hell shoot 'em
that
up
one with
thing.
the Egypt background.
GD, yeah, he's the first really rough one of those.
I hadn't slept in like 30 hours.
Yeah, this is not a good game to play. But yeah, it's gorgeous and it plays great, and it's everything that I kind of like. It's actually better than I hoped it would be, because I definitely tried to keep my expectations
same
kind of low for it. But it's fucking great.
I like this game a lot. I put it about halfway down my list. I think that it's super timeless in the sense that it's like Gunstar Heroes or Contra, in that it's going to be as good to play in 20 years as it is today. I think the only reason it didn't play as higher on my list is that it's kind of limited in what it does. Like it does one thing very, very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an argument. I've made the argument that a game that does that is extremely
that it does
valid.
It so well that's why it plays. So like it does the one thing, and it does it as well as just about anybody that's ever done it before. I will also mention that there's a really great article. I can't remember the author, but he won an award on Unwinnable about the art style in this game and the roots and all the really racist garbage.
Oh, I read that last week.
It's a really good article, because this game does
the one that a bunch of people who say they're not offended by anything got really offended by that article.
So what's really so this game does
I'm shocked to hear it.
This game does do a really great job in sort of editing out most of the like racist caricatures that defined a lot of that early animation. But at the same time, in doing that, it also sort of...
That means it kind of ignores it.
Right. It's also sort of whitewashing it, and sort of... It's totally fine that Cuphead exists, and I love the way it looks, and I'm glad that they did that animation style and managed to mostly sidestep all that really bad stuff. But it's also really important to read articles like that and to watch those old animations and to understand why those things are bad.
Right.
Yes.
I think that what's really great is that there's room for both of those things, like to understand and criticize the roots of this while at the same time appreciating it for what it does. I think that a really amazing thing about human beings, kind of a theme that comes up in Nier quite a bit actually, is that you can think multiple things about the same thing. Like you can have, but only, and they don't necessarily have to line up. But like that's like one thing about people, is that it doesn't have to be that way.
Only two kinds of people would disagree with that, right? Disingenuous assholes who are desperate for clicks on, their outrage pieces about how someone said Cuphead is racist, even though no one actually said that.
Right, if you read that article, the person doesn't
that gets
say
me
that
my
Cuphead
clicks.
is racist. It just says that the creators are responsible of kind of whitewashing some aspects of historical racism, which is the case, and it's not necessarily their job to do that, but that's why that article is important, because that article is what's giving you the context.
It's providing the context that you need. Yeah, exactly.
So either that article a disingenuous asshole, or you would be, or you're someone who just doesn't have any sense of nuance.
Right, a very limited worldview where you think that you can only have one opinion about a thing, and that's not,
you can't say, like, that just bugs me. And there are a lot of people on all sides of issues who lack that sort of nuanced perception of something, and. Like, I just watched Rambo 2 last weekend. And...
Okay, we need to move on, but I have to see where this is going.
That movie rules, but, like, the politics at the heart of that movie about retroactively winning the Vietnam War are, like, utterly fucking repugnant, right?
Yeah.
I feel that about, like,
we talked about that on the Action Cast a lot.
Right, yeah.
I mean, we love action movies, but a lot of them have those problems.
Especially from the 80s, they have really awful, shitty politics, and like you don't have to agree with something's politics or lack thereof or whatever to appreciate and enjoy it. And again, only someone who is bereft of nuance would say that Cuphead is invalid because it's maybe kind of racist or whitewashes things or whatever. But nobody's really saying that. People are straw manning.
I'm sure there are people saying that.
Well, maybe there.
Right. Well, read that article because it's good.
I've read the article. The article's good.
I think he's saying that people are saying that aren't saying that.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yes.
Anyway, we should move on to a game that is mostly free of those sorts of criticisms,
but nonetheless contentious.
I'm talking about some Mario Odyssey, which everybody else has on their list. Joe has it at number 1. It's not on my list. If we did a top 20, it might barely sneak in to my list. I think this game is. I think it's really pretty sometimes. I think it's really ugly sometimes. I think that it has a lot of really cool, interesting new mechanics, and I think that it utterly fails to give you enough interesting scenarios in which to use those mechanics. This game, I really enjoyed it, and I had a great time in the 15 hours it took me to finish it, but I felt constantly like the level design just didn't live up to the it didn't deliver on the promise of the concept or the various weird interesting new mechanics that they came up with.
All right. Well, now that
someone else
Nancy's had his say,
I said I'll step aside and just say that
he needed to get that out.
This is also a game where you can put Mario in his boxer shorts and a clown wig
and
in a really pretty desert area.
I mean,
and that's really great.
Yeah. This is a game where if you have the stick-to-itiveness like I do, you can have Mario wearing a hat with 7 polygons, and his body is a skeleton.
Okay.
Yep, it's true. That can happen.
And I did that. So maybe I should have.
And it has Goomba stacking. You should have put it on the list just for Goomba stacking.
All the various ways that they incorporate mustaches into the classic Mario canon is also really great.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
true. Yep. That's true.
Use of mustaches is A+. Use of Goomba stacking
this definitely gets
A+.
the award for the best use of mustaches from
17. Being a full-size scale T-Rex with a tiny Mario mustache.
Yeah, it was a little tiny mustache is great.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things things that looks cool, but it's not actually any fun to do, unfortunately. But
I think you don't do it very often, and I actually thought it was kind of fun.
It's the best tier monster possession in this game compared to the Goomba stacking and the Pokebird and
I like how a minute ago Eric said he was going to step aside.
Pokebird is I know is A+.
Well, I'm talking about all the cool things that I like about it.
Yeah, well, the best part. So I know that you'll. So Eric, I know that you have something to say about this. The best moment is when you possess Bowser at the very end.
It's pretty cool.
Spoilers.
Oh, spoilers!
I don't know. I still think the Pokebird is the best possession.
The Pokebird is great.
That's also the 6-hour
piece of wood
puzzles based on navigating levels with the Pokebird.
Oh yeah, if they did if they did a Captain Toad treasure tracker style Pokebird game, where
let me bitch that there is no. Like, you see Captain Toad all over this game, and there is at no point where you're like, hey, by the way, here's a little mini Captain Toad level.
See, this isn't contentious. Everyone hates this game for a different reason.
I think it's fine.
I will say that I think that a lot of people...
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's just fine.
It's just
I put it like 8th on my list. It's fine.
I think
it's okay.
It's a good game.
I love this game.
It's super good. I love it, obviously. So I did everything that you can do in this game except for grind for coins to buy enough moons to get you up to 999. Everything besides that,
you said you liked this game.
So that was that was my only
complaint. Son.
And I said this when we streamed about it like a couple months ago. That the problem is that once you start trying to suck out the marrow. Like
there's
way too much same. Well, it's not that there's too much; it's that there's the same things in every level. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, good. This is the Goomba stacking part, and this is the Koopa race part, and it's
actually this is the Goomba stacking part. Is like, oh, good. This is the Goomba stacking.
Well,
part.
right.
So wait,
this
hang
is
on.
The Koopa race part.
The Koopa races don't show up until the post game, and I honestly will say that the Koopa races were one of the things that show up in the post game that were two of my favorite parts of this game were the Koopa races and the new gray brick pipes that have
I agree. I agree.
Those two things I absolutely love.
Yeah, I thought that I like the Koopa races. It's more that every level has the same sort of thing instead of like when you first play the game, there's like 50 fucking moons to get everywhere, and you just kind of like ramble into whatever you fall into, and like it feels like it's limitless. And then it's when you're starting to meticulously go through it, you realize like, oh, I'm doing the same thing on every level. And if they just like cut out half of them, it would feel.
Yeah.
The ones that I would like them to cut out, though, are the ones that are just like sitting on a thing, right? Where it's like, oh, walk to the thing and grab the moon. But also, that's like we were talking earlier. I forgot what game. I think it was SteamWorld Dig, where you're like, oh, you just get one more gem and take it back to the guy and just do. And like I felt that way about the moons.
Oh my god,
there are so many of them where it's just like, oh, I'll just get one more moon. Oh well, there's one. I can see that one.
Just one more for a 3D Mario game is just insane to me.
Yeah,
but I will say that a bunch of people are like, "This is the best Mario game ever," or like, "This is the best 3D Mario game ever," and I don't agree.
Neither
with
of those.
Either of those things.
Yeah.
This it was my favorite game this year.
Yeah.
No, I would say that this is like. I would say
I'm driving to Anthony's house to punch.
I don't think this game is as good as 3D World on the Wii U.
It's not as good as either 3D World or Galaxy.
Yeah, that's agreed. Agreed with that.
Which isn't to say like I voted for number 2, but
right.
It's not as good as any of those 3.
Yeah, but I mean, this game, like Resident Evil 7, I basically did everything that you can do in this game. Again, I could have gone to get coins to buy more moons, but there's no reason to do that aside from like there's a hat on top of Peach's castle if you do that, and like I was like, I'm not spending 45 minutes grinding for coins to do that.
I want to register that I was super skeptical of New Donk City when it appeared in that trailer. Everyone was losing it. I was like, that's a funny name, but I'm skeptical.
People, that's fucking weird.
Yeah, but
they're not really real. They're not real.
They're not.
Well, comparatively speaking.
But I loved it.
They're
and
not
I didn't
cartoony.
Expect to. I expected that to be the part I kind of like suffered through.
I loved it because there are.
Yeah, exactly.
I disagree. I think the desert world is probably the worst level in the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is unfortunate because it's
worse than the ice level. where it's just like a bunch of slidey shit.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Or worse than the I mean, like, this is a good example of a level with a cool mechanic that is tiny and gives you almost
This
an
level's
opportunity to
great.
do anything interesting with. But like that's what I mean is that, like, this is a cool mechanic, but like what I just did in this 5 minutes is like all there is to do on this island.
Right, but it doesn't like overstay its welcome, right? Like it's
Hey,
not like, oh,
I know, but like I feel like that's good, but at the same time there was more things that they could have done with that mechanic to challenge you.
I mean, but that mechanic shows up later. Like once you get to the last stage. So sorry.
Right after
the last stage where you actually face Bowser.
After you spend a million hours churning over soil looking for the moons that are boring to find, then you get to do something interesting with those mechanics.
No, I'm talking about when you face Bowser, which you have to get like a quarter of the available moons to face Bowser. Like in his fortress, there's a whole bunch of shit that you that you use the weird rainbow wiggler again to like get around some stuff on some moving platforms, and you do a bunch of that stuff again in more complex situations when you're on the moon. And then if you play as you said, if you play all the way to the very end and get to the darker side of the moon, which is like just a super stiff challenge of everything you've learned and everything you've done and every technique that you've unlocked and all that, and there's no checkpoints, so you have to do it all in one shot, and like that's super satisfying to go through. I thought. I mean, again,
I may never finish it.
I'm never gonna collect enough moons to actually see that, and it makes me.
I wanted to wait until I could play it on my TV, that particular level on my TV, and then I kind of stopped playing this game for 2 months. And then I went back to it, and I just got my ass handed to me.
Yeah, it atrophied all your skills.
Yeah,
it's not as honestly. I was talking to one of my coworkers, and like, it's not as bad as Champion Road and Super Mario 3D World. Like, that's way harder.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I agree.
Side of the moon, but I mean, Eric, if you want to play it the next time you're down here, like, you can play it. You can play the darker side stage and check it out if you want to.
Removed. I think I will say that this game has the best feeling controls of any 3D character platformer that has ever come out.
Oh man, I have a really hard time with it. As someone who still plays Galaxy games pretty frequently, going back and forth is rough.
Between this,
I think the controls.
You mean Galaxy is better than this, or?
Well, they're just so different, and like the Galaxy games give you the spin jump, which is so useful.
Yeah, but once you learn in the post game to throw your hat and dive onto it and bounce off,
and the amount of
like
just
that
the
is the best move ever.
Mario from like one spot to another is so
I agree with that, but I will say that the shoehorned in motion controls are like no friend of mine.
Yes, thank you.
A couple of things that you basically have to use the motion controls for.
You don't really have to use those moves, right?
There are a couple things you have to get. There are a couple moves you can only earn that way.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, or like winning the Koopa races. There's some stuff where it's like you kind of got to do some tricky shit to win against the faster like Koopa.
I think I did all of them without motion controls, but there's a couple. There are a couple things like one of those, the electric, like when you turn into the little like electric piece of electricity on the wire.
Yeah.
Like if you shake it, you do a move that you can only do by shaking.
Right.
There's one with the little fireball guy too. You do like a dash that you can only do by shaking.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Don't do that.
I think
anymore.
there's one in Bowser's castle area where there's a moon where you get repeated coin fields that you have to collect all the coins, and I don't see how that's possible at all without doing the rotational shake stuff.
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, that's Mario. It's good.
Yep.
But yeah, anyways, Mario. It's
great. Super good. I would ignore the hype that's saying it's the best Mario ever, but I would still say
I don't think it's anywhere
super
close,
good.
But
it's super good.
It's definitely better than Sunshine, though.
Yeah,
not saying a whole lot. It's the second worst 3D Mario game.
Well, I was kind of skeptical that this wasn't a Galaxy style.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they did. They did a great thing to
for
3D
me. Like
Mario.
for me, the difference between like there's no version of this game, even a better version with better level designs, is probably not as good as Galaxy to me. Just because I prefer like the smaller,
the more focused, the smaller spaces that are more defined.
Platform challenge oriented.
I was about to say that's the thing that I miss was having sort of confined spaces where you got to do more.
I really love exploring, but just like collecting the moons is not does not trigger the endorphin rush when it comes to exploring in the same way that just finding an interesting thing does.
That was the great change of this, is that when you got one, you didn't go back to a select screen.
Yeah, I mean, they had to do that with how many moons they put in it.
And I know, and it was a fantastic change.
That's because
it made the pace way faster.
That's because Mario Galaxy is a Mario game, and this is a Banjo-Kazooie game.
No, it's not that.
Let's move on to our number one game.
All right.
Well, wait. Can I say real quick? Real quick.
Absolutely.
No. My problem. My problem with this game.
No, you can only be positive about this game because it was delightful in a year I really needed it to be.
I mean, we didn't mention it, so
I
that's
definitely.
not a surprise.
I feel like I'll be interested to see what people think of this game like 10 years from now when a sequel comes out. I think that I don't think this is going to age quite as well as the Galaxy games and some of the other Mario games. So
that's probably true.
I'm gonna segue into our game of the year here because so the problem with Mario is that it's the type of I like my Mario games where it's like, hey, you've got like a short time limit. It's like here's the beginning and the end. Work your way through the level. Like I'm not as big of a fan as the like, hey, here's like an open area and explore it and just find stuff. I'm not as into that. Like it's not that I have.
I agree with you, but I still thought Odyssey was excellent.
Yeah, no, and it is an excellent game. It's just like I couldn't get hyped about it because this game came out earlier, the game that is on the screen right now, and I'm like, man, I spent hundreds of hours just doing like I'm gonna fucking find everything.
Hey, what's over there?
Like,
I'm gonna go climb up that mountain, and you know what?
What's over there? What's over there? Another Bokoblin.
Yeah, unfortunately,
who's gonna
and my sword is broken.
I definitely spent a great deal of 2017 being like the negative Nate about this game, but I also think that this game is
even though you spent like 1,000 hours playing it.
I spent almost 100 hours playing it, and I still think that from the aspect of this being doing something different with the sort of open world game genre, to bring in the survival aspects, to like make you pay attention to
something
your body
different with Zelda.
And well, hang on, I'm getting to that. But what like the way they pitch this game is like, see that mountain over there? You can go to that, and like everybody's like, well, we've done that in Skyrim, and we've done that and all these other things, but now instead of being a weird, awkward 3D body that kind of has to like awkwardly jump and rub up against backgrounds to climb mountains and things, now you are an ant in a terrarium and you can just go anywhere. You're the
world's best mountain climber.
You can just go north
unless it's raining.
Unless it's raining until you get
basically.
Right. Once you can go anywhere you want. Once you
up your climbing,
spend about an hour.
Find the climbing clothes. And
just in case anyone hasn't figured out what we're talking about and is not watching the video, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
This game kicks ass.
Which I think everybody but me bought a Switch to play this. Is that?
I
had a Switch already.
I bought
it the same day. How did you have a Switch already?
I wanted a reason to buy a Switch and use this.
Yeah, right.
I played this on the Wii U.
I
played it on the Wii U.
I did.
And then I got hired by the company and got a Switch.
Yeah, I did.
Did you
all
replay
of that
it on the
except
Switch?
the part where I got hired by the company.
I bought a Switch and I bought this.
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I'm so far in it in the Wii U version, I'm like, I want to buy it on Switch and start over, but I'm like, nah, dude, that would take me. Like, I played this game like 120 hours or something. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing that again. Like,
yeah, no
but
way.
yeah, as for, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, okay, so we've talked a little bit about games this year that are and are not flawed, and I think it is fair to say that there definitely are flaws with Breath of the Wild.
Flaws in this game.
I think that basically the entire critical path of this game is just not good. The story is really bad.
I think that the setup for the plot is interesting, but they don't do anything. Good with
but
it.
They don't do anything. They don't realize the emotional journey they think they're taking you on.
Yes.
Yeah, and even just like mechanically, I think that the four main dungeons aren't super interesting.
Yep.
that's my biggest.
I had fun. I had fun with them.
Some of the bits that they force you to go through are, I think, just painful. Like the stealthy bits and the bits where you're like following the rock guy up the mountain, and so I don't know.
Oh yeah, okay.
But then,
But then this game, what's good about this game is, in a certain sense, it's what
there's not enough floating in this demo that you're doing over there.
I agree.
No one is jumping off of things and floating around, fighting around.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Anyway,
so what I like about this game is the same thing that I liked about Skyrim, which is that there's so much stuff in this game to do that you can just kind of focus on the bits that are actually good. Good for you.
You can do what you're interested in.
And in my case, there was exactly one thing that I wanted to do, and that was explore every square inch of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was just such a wonderfully designed world. There was so many things to find, like so much.
Did you find all the Korok seeds, Mike?
Yeah,
every single one, Joe.
Did you really?
No, I found like 90
You
or
didn't
something
get
like
the
that.
Okay, well, then you didn't explore every square inch of this world, did you?
So, for my part, I will say that
he did, just not under all the rocks.
That's
I will
right,
say
Mike.
that this
Stop
game,
talking.
my major criticism of this game is actually that it doesn't give you, like, there actually aren't that many interesting things to find. But that doesn't matter because the interesting part is getting there. You go there and you look and you see that this is more than any game I've ever played. This makes me feel like I do when I'm like walking in the woods.
I was about to say that.
There's a pond over there, and when I go to the pond, I'm not going there to get treasure or
I'm not going hiking because exactly.
Yeah, I've already been there and gotten the treasure.
I'm not going to the top of this mountain because I need new pants or whatever. I'm going there because I want to see what it looks like when I get to the top, and
you'll need
that's
them afterwards.
the thing that this game really did for me for the majority of it. Just like the reward was just I spent the time and the effort to get to the top, and then I got to look and see what it was like up there.
Right.
And then
I think that your definition and my definition of interesting things
from
to
the
find
top, I could see another interesting thing that I wanted to go see, and then I would go see.
Those are the interesting things. The world's the interesting thing, like the different formations, the lookout points, the weird little collections of trees or a strangely shaped lake. And like 9 times out of 10, when you go to those places, there's something. It's not mind blowing necessarily each time, but what's mind blowing is how many of them there are and how they're always willing to reward you for just taking the time to get to know the world that you're in.
I think we're also talking a lot from the perspective of everybody who's spent hours and hours and hours playing this. But like, you guys remember the first time like you went somewhere cool and there was a fucking dragon there and you didn't even expect there to be
with the big dragon.
I didn't even know there was gonna be a dragon in the game.
After the chicken dinner and Battlegrounds, I think seeing that first dragon just rise out of Lake Hylia was my favorite moment of anything that I played.
Seeing the dragon and seeing the getting attacked by the bandits.
Seeing when.
Like when you like talk to someone and they're
and they turn into a bandit.
Yeah.
So I actually saw the first dragon not at the top of that mountain, but just like out of the corner of my eye at night near like Hyrule Castle, near like to the southwest of it. And I was just sort of like I was looking for some shrine or something, and all of a sudden, just out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move, and I turned and looked. I'm like, holy fucking shit! What is that?
I just happened to be there right when it like rose up, and I was like, "What the fuck did I just do?"
Right. Yeah.
I had like a weird glitch of sorts happen where like I was so far away from the dragon, like I saw it, it's huge, but I was so far away from it that the game like loaded in a version of it that was like really low poly. So like, because it's supposed to be super far off in the background.
It's like derpy like sock puppet.
Yeah. So when I saw him, I was like, oh well, fuck, I gotta go check that out. So I fucking booked it over there, and it like stayed the low poly like thing. So like I tried to like land on it and like shoot it and like hit it and stuff like that, but I just kind of like phased through it, and it was like it wasn't there. It was like tight.
It sounds sick.
Yeah. So all of that is all true. For me, like I already sort of voiced my major complaints about it, but there's not enough enemy variety.
That's really boring.
Combat is not that interesting, and the weapon degradation
fine, though.
system
Yes,
I had no problem at all with the weapon degradation.
That one didn't bother me at all.
Yeah, so the weapon degradation could be annoying, but the game gives you so many weapons that it
exactly.
Really
but they're all the fucking same. So what's the
point?
It
gives you
right, exactly.
It gives you some weapons.
I just have one more of the one I just had that just broke. Who gives a fuck?
Right. Well, that's it exactly. So there's no reason to ever engage in the combat.
Well, except when you have the ones that are good for killing the Guardians, which have some of the best loot, and you're like, oh, I just broke my laser axe thing, and now I don't have another one.
Them as another laser axe.
Sometimes,
sometimes the only good stuff in the game to get is the armor, and you don't usually get that from killing things. So don't fight.
I think all of the climbing gear you get from combat challenges and shrines, though.
Yeah, but you don't need to have like 1 billion laser axes to win those challenges.
No.
You don't need to have 1 billion, but you need to have a couple to do it easily without it taking like a half hour.
Honestly, it feels like they kind of like wussed out on the weapon degradation. Like, you know what I mean? Like they either should have made it so that you get just a bunch of cool weapons that you can pick between and use, or they should have leaned harder in the direction that Joe would have really hated, where the weapon degradation is actually meaningful and it's actually hard to get your hands on a decent weapon. So that way, when you have one, you have to A, really think about whether or not to engage in combat, and B, you have to make sure that you have access to another one, or that it actually does damage to your ability to play the game when you lose your weapons.
I legitimately hated this game if that was.
But I'm just saying I'm saying that as it is, it would have been better to just go harder in the other direction and just give you like a series of cool spears that get better as you go, and a series of cool swords that get better as you go, and you don't have to worry about it at all. Because as it's implemented in this game, it's not a meaningful mechanic, and it's also not. It's just kind of a nuisance.
I think
once I figured out what you have to do to get the Master Sword, like once I put that together, then literally I beelined, kind of.
The Master Sword for 5 minutes, and then you can't use it for 5 minutes. It's so dumb.
Right. But if it depends on what you use, it depends on what you're using it for. Some enemies, it doesn't degrade when you're fighting.
When you engage the ancient enemies, but it's like. But then you're like, okay, now I gotta not use this really good weapon.
Yeah, I played a ton of a game called The Long Dark this year, which is a game that uses item degradation. Like, you make an axe or you make a knife, and then as you use it up and it becomes less and less sharp, it's kind of scary because you need those things to cut wood to make fires to stay alive at night. And so if you put that kind of tension in this game, then that would be like, whether you love it or hate it, at least it's an interesting mechanic. But as it is in this game, it's just, like I said, it's just a minor nuisance that would be better off with a more interesting weapon progression, or something like a Dark Souls where you find a bunch of different weapons and then you can choose the one that you like and then upgrade it to, like, if you want to be a spear guy, you can be a spear guy. If you want to be a sword guy, you can be a sword guy.
Yeah, or you can, it breaks, but then you can take it somewhere and fix it or whatever. And
I love that you just saw a man walking and went to talk to him.
Yeah. That's this game.
Absolutely.
Like, that's the thing, is that, like,
hey, there's that dude. Let's go find out what he's up to.
The more I played it, the more like annoyed I became at all this stuff that like needs to be improved that needs to and could be improved in a sequel. But at the same time, like, the first 60 or so hours I spent playing this game was some of the most fun I've ever had playing a video game. It's just it's such a great map to explore.
Agreed.
And I mean, I think I said something along the lines of way back when we did a deep dive on this. There's so many places I can see where an improvement would happen, but this is such an improvement over other games that I would play that it's still like was a perfect 10 for me anyways. I would score it a 10 even if I wouldn't call it perfect.
Like the
there is no perfect game.
Well, sure, right.
So that's stupid.
But I mean, like, there's like,
but I get what you're saying.
About you put some games on your list this year because there were no flaws necessarily. There are definitely flaws in this. There's definitely things that they could, a million different things they could add, but it was so good. It was such a step above the series.
Hey, guys, listen. Hey, listen. You don't have to listen to a fairy say, "Hey, listen to you, million fucking." They made Zelda good. They made Zelda good again. It's been bad for a really long time, and they made it.
Whoa! Link Between Worlds was.
This is a Zelda game that you could. This is a 3D Zelda game that you can play. I
believe the record will show that Alex and Joe both really liked the last 3D Zelda. Or this
God, Skyward Sword is such a fucking.
Oh God, yeah. I'm like, wait, which game was that? Oh yeah, Skyward Sword. That game fucking sucked.
Also, not only that, but this.
They finally made a Zelda game better than Zelda 2.
But the way that you can interact, the way that you can use the powers, like there's the magnet power and the one that makes things go stationary and you can hit them and they retain momentum. Like the amount of guts that it took for Nintendo to just put those systems in the game with no limits, basically. Right. Like you can just you can cut down a tree and you can put it into stasis and then you can climb on it. You can ride it like a rocket ship. And it's like, why can you do that? Like, and so
why not?
It's so awesome to do it that I kind of wish that.
That's the opposite of what Nintendo usually does. They don't make system-driven games generally.
Right. Like normally you would get a tool that would let you, do the thing with the tree, but it would only be useful in a very specific instance. And in this game, you can just do it because it's cool, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like that's a thing that I would love to see in a sequel is them incorporate the ability to do that into some of the puzzles a little bit more. Or just to give you a reason to do that.
I hope the sequel is weird as shit, like Majora's Mask, and yet is also like this somehow. That's what I want.
I don't know how they. I don't know how. Honestly, I don't know how this game feels. If this game looked like, if it wasn't a Switch game but a PC game, like have you seen the high-res mods of this?
No.
Yeah, people have already done like Wii U emulation, and there's like high-res mods where it like gives even more draw distance and cleans it up. And
oh man,
like playing that game would feel like playing a game from like 10 years from now. Like this game is so far ahead in certain aspects of its design.
The art design is so good.
Yeah, it feels like a thing that dropped out of the future. It doesn't feel like a thing that exists.
Yeah,
and
I mean, to me,
hopefully lots of other people are paying attention and are, taking, like Kurt said, the system-driven aspects of this and the amount of freedom it gives you and how you explore the world. And
as much as I bitched about all of the things I bitched about, I would feel like they're about 90% of the way there. And if they, get the other 10%, I will have, I will lose my shit.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a game. So I did mention earlier that I really like games that are super, super tightly designed, but there is another, the reason that I like games like Metal Gear Solid, like especially 5 and, Deus Ex, Human Revolution and that kind of thing is because they're games that like this game really kind of give you a set of tools and just go like, okay, like solve the problem.
Do what you want.
There's not necessarily like a prescribed way to solve this problem. If you want to ride the tree like a rocket ship to get up to that thing over there, you can do that. You can also just ride a fucking horse, or you can
get up. Or watching how poorly Eric is doing on
the thing that I really like.
Bow and arrow. About 9 months when I picked back up to record this footage. Also, these are post-game enemies, so it takes like a million hits to do any damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would like to. I like to get up to teleport to high places and then just glide down to. If I was trying to get to a place, I'd be like, "Well, where's there a taller place adjacent?" And then I'll just like glide to the.
The thing that there's a few things I want to say about this game, but one of the things I really like about it is that there was just a rush of every day. I feel like once it came out, somebody would be like, dude, did you see that you can take this thing and light it on fire, and if you put meat next to it, it cooks it? And it's like, wait, what? And it's like, just little shit like that, or oh, if you go to this place and you drop a thing down, the guy smiles, and you're like, what?
Right?
Yeah.
But it's there's so many details and so much little shit.
It was totally the schoolyard kind of.
Yeah.
The ones that the ones of those that I really liked was after I beat it, and I would see people it's taking on Calamity Ganon naked with a stick, and I'm like, what the fuck? What?
Once you get off that plateau, there's an hour-long tutorial kind of thing to get the powers, but after that you can just go do whatever you want, including literally just going to the end boss.
To the final boss,
right
Which is one thing I wanted to say that
traffic cone.
The weapon degradation thing you guys were talking about, like how
Joe, I was like a second behind, so that's like you summoned it. That was weird.
But the weapon degradation thing, I think that really plays like a part in setting the tone of the game, because even if you don't use it, like even if it's not really a factor later in the early game, when you first start off with nothing and you're in this big open space and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? And you're literally in your underwear. Like finding a stick is like a big deal.
Yeah.
And you find like a rusted sword and you're like, oh, okay.
Shit, I found a sword.
You're like, I can kind of like defend myself a little bit now.
Now I don't have to worry about avoiding that dude over there.
That holds true for the first 10 or 15 hours of the game, but there's
that's what I mean. Like
where it's no longer.
Yeah, exactly. You reach a point where you have like
keep me going for 100 hours.
Yeah, you reach a point where you have like 16 inventory slots, and every single weapon is like 50 strength or better, and
that's the same thing. Like the Korok seeds are like that as well, where it's like the first 10 times you find the Koroks, it's like, oh, that's a cute thing, and then it's like, oh, there's 900 of these.
And somewhere around like hour like 60 or 50, I started noticing, oh, when I get to the top of the mountain and there's a single rock, I should pick it up. Or if I get to the...
I know what's under here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
For me, it was like
60 hours to figure out.
Not that one, but
when I hit 50 or 60 hours,
it was 58.
I would climb to the top of the mountain and see the thing that would give me the Korok seed, and I would go, I don't want to take the 5 seconds it would take to do this. It's meaningless, so I'm just not going to bother.
That one was obvious, but it was basically like, once you really get down to it, there's like 5 different ways like Korok seeds will show up, and it's kind of like, okay.
Did you guys do that big rock puzzle with the statues in the desert? Where you have to push those, like that's the kind of thing I wish there was more of in this game.
You just like happen upon it and you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this.
Like
now.
Obviously I can do something with this. It's almost like a witness puzzle where it's like built into the environment, and then you have to A, figure out what the parameters of the puzzle are, and then B, solve the puzzle. And there's only
just walk in and go.
There's that. There's like the labyrinths. There's a couple other things in the game that are like that. There's the dragons. Are kind of like that as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's I feel like this game, there was a lot of buzz about this when it came out, but this game is like the full realization of like the promise of the original Zelda. Yeah. It's just, you're just out somewhere and you're like, what the fuck is this? I don't know, I'll push it. And then there's like you get a thing, and that's all they could do back in the 8-bit days. But now it's like, well, shit, we got all this like tech. Let's do something cool with it. Why
wouldn't we?
Yeah, like let's just put random statues out here, because it's the world of Hyrule is a character in this game. Like,
I'll never forget, like when Dragon Quest 9 came out, or excuse me, 8, the really pretty one. The guy who directed it in an interview was like, he was like, well, we don't need an overworld map in an RPG because, like, this system could just have a world now.
Mm-hmm.
Like computers can do that now. Why are we still doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about that a lot. That kind of comment a lot in this game.
Yep, it's really something special. Well, I think it ended up third on my list or whatever.
But between all of us,
when you get to the back half, it just kind of runs out of things for you to like. Like you
but
kind
that
of
takes
found
like 60 hours to get there.
Fine. Yeah,
like,
but
I cannot complain in good faith about a game that gets boring after 60 hours.
Honestly, if they'd put like 3 more things in it that were like the labyrinths and the big stone statue puzzle, like that was probably all it would have taken to make it number 1. But it just,
I mean, I think a number of people have suggested like next time have dungeons that you can just kind of wander into on accident.
Yeah, if the dungeons
that aren't all similar, like the dungeons look. All 4 of them looked very similar.
Actual dungeons were that bad.
They weren't bad necessarily.
I felt like they were too short.
I thought they were bad.
Doing all those shrines
they're too long.
Was like, to me, doing all the shrines.
Just imagine going around that hill right there on that horse, and you see like a crumbling castle, and you can just like go into it, and then there's like puzzles.
Alex is right in that the shrines are
right.
Like
the shrines are like mini.
It's like instead of assembling all the different puzzles that normally make up a dungeon, they just broke them up.
Right, they broke them all apart.
Yeah, and I didn't like that because
I was fine with that. I would have been more fine with that if the dungeons had
But
been
there are
better,
some of the best things about
the gimmick is that you
dungeons
sort of
are the ones
use
that
the
like
map to make the dungeon do something, but it's never really that interesting. And it was just kind of also the dungeons felt really out of place because they were like this static thing that you could only interact with in one real way, whereas everything else in the game really gave you the freedom to use the systems to solve the puzzles. Even in the shrines, you can do fucking bonkers shit to solve different puzzles. Like there's that really shitty one where you have to it's like a ball falls down. You have to use the Switch motion controls to drop it.
There's more than one of those.
There's 2 or 3 of them. Yeah.
There's like 10 gifs of people all solving it in different ways, including like flipping the thing upside down and using it like as a bat to swat the ball into position, or flipping it upside down and making it into a smooth ramp so you don't have to navigate the maze. There's a bunch of different ways that you could feel like you were kind of gaming the system, and the main dungeons didn't really afford you that.
But I mean, I think that's fine because the main dungeons are going for a more like just straightforward traditional Zelda thing.
Failed in that.
That's what I was about to say. Is like I love me a Zelda dungeon, and when I got to the first beast, I was like, I put off doing it for a long time because I was just like, all I would do is like, I'm gonna explore the world, and I'd play the game for like 3 hours and then do that, and then be like, okay, I'm good.
It was so hard to load up this game, be like, I'm doing this next, and actually follow through on that plan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing is, I would follow through on it, but it would take like a thing that would take me maybe like 20 minutes to actually do would take me 3 hours, and I do a bunch of other stuff in between.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Zelda's
but
great. I think we need to. It's probably time for us.
It's 1
to
in the
stop.
morning.
Yeah.
But
there's
a lot of great,
the dungeons are disappointing.
Zelda
I still
was
like the
probably
for all the complaining we're doing about the
there's so many
our game of the year.
facets to Zelda that it's
the map of the year.
One of the most interesting things that came out this year. It's really good.
It's definitely so. I should say that it scored a full 10 points higher than Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
On our,
well, that's because
so
Mario Odyssey
we liked it a lot
shouldn't
more.
be in the top 10. Like if it was tied for 15th, that would be fine. But
hey, quit being a negative Nathan or whatever you said earlier.
Anyway, that's
it's okay. You can be wrong about Mario Odyssey.
Normally I would say if we have any special awards, but I think
we have a couple, but it's pretty late.
Listen to the soundtrack for the Mummy.
Do it for next week.
What was that, Mike?
It's not enough content.
The soundtrack for the Mummy Demastered. It's super good.
Yeah, the Mummy Demastered soundtrack is really good.
Don't play Double Dragon 4. It's fucking hot shit garbage, and that's so disappointing.
Yeah, watching
play Final Fantasy 12: The Zodiac Age, now available on PC, or maybe it's soon. I don't know.
Watching you play that, Joe, was just so.
Get off this podcast with your 2006 ass games, Alex.
I don't understand how
that game's awesome.
I don't understand how you could make a new Double Dragon in 2017 and have it be so fucking boring.
It's just a bad ROM hack. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's a shitty ROM hack of Double Dragon 2.
Best gun of 2017, the Scathe Lock from Destiny 2.
I guess.
Yeah,
Destiny 2 didn't make my list.
You guys all played a whole bunch of Destiny 2 and nobody ranked it.
Let me tell you this: it would rank above Mario, that's for sure. But no, so I just wanted Destiny.
I'm so glad I didn't buy that.
Has some real problems with the quest system, but
like
the way that each gun kind of feels different in that game is something. Really, that's a real achievement. That's really cool. Shout out to Observer for being a really awesome thing that nobody played. That's the best use of Rutger Hauer in 2017. Also,
what else did Rutger Hauer do in 2017?
I have no idea, but it wasn't as good as Observer.
It wasn't as good as that.
It just barely missed my list. Was there anything
Shout
else?
out to this fucking hang glider, man. Yeah.
Oh, can I give
shout out to The Long Dark, which was the best game that came out in 2013 that I played in 2017. Because that was an early access game that came out 5 years ago and finally got full release this year. I don't know.
For the goddamn dragon.
So we weren't going to do any words or anything, but you're shooting out like 15 different additional games on your list.
If you got more, go for it.
Can I give a shout out to Mass Effect Andromeda for having the worst single player game experience in any game ever, but having like a fucking tight ass multiplayer experience?
That game
so it's like Resident Evil 5?
That game won Giant Bomb's most disappointing and worst game of the year. So
I like the multiplayer a lot, but I never finished the single player because, like I said, it was not very good.
Killed Mass Effect.
It kind of did, but whatever.
Sad.
Yeah. Pouring out for Mass Effect. Can I give a best secret Suikoden game is Ys 8? Because you run around and you like make a castle.
You saying that like makes me really want to play that.
I heard the translation.
It doesn't play like Suikoden, but it's like you just you go to an area and you're like doing a Ys dungeon, and at the end it's like you recruit a person to your town, and then your town gets bigger.
Shout out to Splatoon 2 for being the game that I wanted to like the most, but couldn't.
Oh my god,
Nintendo
wouldn't let you play it.
Fucking broken and awful.
That is
my biggest disappointment of the year, Splatoon 2, and I played Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Well, but you didn't play Double Dragon 4.
No, that's true.
Tell ya,
but Double Dragon 4 wouldn't have cost me $80.
Shout out to Detention, which is a little indie game from Korea, which manages to incorporate some really cool ideas of haunting and being trapped in limbo, and also be a really great. It's kind of like oh shit, what was that Jasper Byrne game that came out like 5 years ago that got
Lone Survivor.
It's a little Lone Survivor. It's more of a 2D adventure game, but it's similar in tone, and it was really, really good. I don't know that anybody played it, but it should have gotten, if there wasn't a fucking 1,000 million goddamn good video games that came out this year, then it probably would have gotten a little bit more notoriety.
Can I give a shout out to Golf Story for being
because Golf Story is not very good.
It made me smile.
Yeah,
all right, and shout out to Sleep, which is where I'm going now.
I like that too.
2017 for having tons of super cool games.
It was a pretty crazy year.
That's something to enjoy.
Did make up for the rest of the bullshit that year, but
no kidding.
Games were pretty good.
It gave you a lot of stuff to do, so you could not pay attention.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Please look forward to 2018.
Nope.
Year of Monster Hunter.
The year of Monster Hunter and Dragon Ball.
Everyone's going to play Monster Hunter.
Shout out to Overwatch for once again being the game I played the most in 2017.
Yeah.
Shout out to Street Fighter 5 for being the game I played the most of again. Because I hate myself.
Hey, I play Overwatch for kind of the same reason sometimes. Anyway, that was
Me too.
Year. It was a pretty crazy year. I feel like there was a lot of people saying this was the best year. I don't know if I could say that this was necessarily better.
I couldn't say that. I could say there are a lot of good games,
or even better than 2015. But it's crazy the amount of.
Could say it was a great year, but I don't.
That come out all the time. So
yeah, agreed.
But video games used to be better.
That's
right.
Anyway, we'll be back.
Right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Well,
bye.
We'll be back next week with a normal stream. That's
5.5 hours long.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.